Chapter 535. Suyu was embarrassed. His eyes were blind, and before he opened them, his soul eyes had already been opened, allowing him to see everything that was happening in the outside world. He could see Xia Jingyu's every move. Ever since that question, there had been a tacit understanding between the two of them. Suyu had gradually realized that Xia Jingyu was interested in him. But he had Xian'er first, and he could not let Xia Jingyu down. He could not be thick-skinned enough to accept this friendship. Moreover, if Xian'er knew that her fiancé had a secret relationship with her best friend, Xia Jingyu, would she be upset? Let me help you continue your comprehension. Xia Jingyu's face was red, and she hurriedly shifted her attention. Suyu felt the awkward atmosphere, and he nodded, immediately merging his divine decree with hers. As their hands clasped tightly, Suyu could feel her trembling nervously. This caused Suyu's heart to sink. How was he going to respond to Xia Jingyu's feelings? With a heavy heart, Suyu quickly got into the zone, borrowing her powers of comprehension to continue comprehending the technique. This comprehension lasted for half a day. Along the way, Xia Jingyu had to stop to rest twice. But there was no resentment on her face. There was only unconcealable joy. A day later, Suyu stood up. The air around him trembled continuously, and shreds of a mysterious aura emanated from Suyu's body. Xia Jingyu felt extremely uneasy. Her figure flickered, and she immediately retreated, surveying her surroundings in shock. Why is the spirit energy of the universe so chaotic? Xia Jingyu's eyes were filled with wisdom. When Brother Yu was still Inu, it was said that he had mastered a legendary technique. To think that it was true. At that moment, the trembling of the space around Suyu increased. Black cracks appeared in the space, like broken glass. A wave of space energy descended from the sky, wrapping around Suyu. It looked like he was about to be transported. The remnant force of my breakthrough reached the level of the fairy realm, and I was transported by the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion? Xia Jingyu's expression changed. Luckily, Suyu had been startled by the strange phenomenon, and had woken up in time. The mysterious heavenly map appeared, repelling the space energy and preventing him from being transported. Congratulations, Brother Yu! You've achieved great success. Xia Jingyu's face was full of smiles, as if she was happier than if she had made a breakthrough in her movement technique. Suyu was also very excited. After being stagnant for so long, he had finally cultivated the Buddhist saint's 8 characters to the upper class, and had managed to cultivate the fighting formula. The might of this martial art was a level higher than the Bing character. Its might was not to be underestimated. As Suyu looked at Xia Jingyu, who was sincerely happy for him, he thought for a moment, then asked, "How can I repay you, Jingyu?" Xia Jingyu had helped him so much that Suyu didn't know how to repay her. It had always been other people who owed Suyu favors, but he owed Xia Jingyu countless favors. "I don't need to repay you, as long as Brother Yu remembers me." Xia Jingyu smiled sweetly, her face blushing. "Remember you?" Suyu's heart became heavy as he felt Xia Jingyu's emotions getting more intense as she grew older. "Jingyu, Suyu wanted to say something, but he hesitated. He wanted to reject her, but when he looked at Xia Jingyu's bright eyes, he couldn't bring himself to say anything. As if sensing Suyu's complicated emotions, Xia Jingyu's smile froze, and she became silent. There was still an insurmountable barrier between her and Suyu. As she thought of this, her eyes darkened. After a moment, she forced a smile. "Brother Yu, let's quickly go to the Divine Sparrow stage. Since everyone is gathered there might be people trying to break through the stone statue forest. If there are people who succeed, we can learn from them." "All right, but I need to make some preparations." Suyu felt as if a huge burden had been lifted from his shoulders, and he took out a set of clothes. It was the clothes of the returning principal palace. The people of Jiuzhou do not seem to know that there are people from the Zhenlong continent here, and they think we are wandering martial artists of Jiuzhou. The status of wandering martial artists is very low in Jiuzhou. To avoid trouble, I should continue to pretend to be a disciple of the returning principal palace. Su Yu quickly put on a set of clothes with the returning principal palace's insignia, making him look even more heroic. Xia Jingyu nodded. I will listen to Brother Yu. She secretly observed Su Yu, feeling that no matter how he dressed, he would stand out from the crowd. Su Yu, En Yu, Black Snow Devil King. Which one of them was not an existence that shook the world? Thinking about this, she could not help but feel proud. The Divine Sparrow stage was not too far away. They followed the direction that Jing Zijing had escaped, and arrived in an hour's time. They were still hundreds of miles away when they discovered traces of people. They were scouting the edges of the stone forest, as if they were looking for a weakness. As they went deeper into the forest, the number of people became more and more concentrated. At one point, they encountered a large group of 20 people. When they arrived at a huge stage that had been flattened out of thin air, they were instantly shocked by the bustling crowd. Looking over, there were more than 300 to 400 people walking around on the stage. Their clothes were all different and their cultivation levels were all different. They were scattered all over the stage. In an instant, the place was filled with people, as if it was a bustling market. Su Yu was used to a sparsely populated environment. Now that he had suddenly entered this place, he felt as if he had been in another world. But Su Yu was even more shocked. How could there be so many people? Could they have appeared at the 8th level of the Divine Pavilion from the start? At the 7th level of the Divine Pavilion, Su Yu and his group had experienced many dangers before entering the spell with great difficulty. Almost 100 people had died at the hands of the silver puppets. Why were there still so many people? So many people? It looks like the King of Darkness saved a wandering martial artist and obtained a map to travel between the 7th and 8th level of the Divine Pavilion. This is not a secret among the wandering martial artists of Jiuzhou. So many people have taken the shortcut to enter the 8th level. There was indeed another route. The so-called transportation spell that Lu Chui and her group knew was probably outdated information. As for the information of wandering martial artists, they were much more flexible compared to the various factions. There were also some factions that had heard of this news. For example, the Yufeng faction. Su Yu did not remember meeting them at the 7th level of the Divine Pavilion, but they had also come to this place. I heard that on the last day of the mysterious Heavenly Divine Pavilion, there will be an exchange gathering, and everyone will take what they need. Back then, the King of Darkness did not have the right to come to the 8th level, and he regretted it. It is said that the appearance of precious items at the exchange gathering could alert the seniors at the mysterious heavenly stage of Jiuzhou. They would think of a way to open up a crack and cross realms to exchange for items. As seniors, they would not be stingy, and the person exchanging for items would usually get something worth it. What? There could be Jiuzhou seniors exchanging across realms? This was something that Yu Chan had never mentioned. With this, if no one in the mysterious Heavenly Divine Pavilion had found the blood of a real dragon, and the Jiuzhou seniors had shown themselves, they could ask them. The possibility of them having the blood of a real dragon was even greater. Su Yu could not miss out on this exchange gathering. Su Yu observed his surroundings, and he quickly discovered a few familiar figures. Ghost King Bai Qi. In reality, he had noticed Su Yu after he had arrived, and he had been paying attention to Su Yu. The other person was Xing Xuelian. It looked like she had also avoided the silver puppet and successfully entered the 8th level of the Divine Pavilion. Of the people who had been with them, Yu Chan had disappeared, Lu Chui had left the mysterious Heavenly Divine Pavilion, Xing Guo had been petrified, and Chou Ziming had died. Only the 3 of them were left. The 2 of them nodded at him from afar as a form of greeting. Suddenly, Su Yu felt an obscure gaze, and he could not help but turn his head to look. Behind the crowd, there was a 14-year-old girl wearing a bamboo hat. Her face was completely covered by the bamboo hat, and only the exquisite curves of her body revealed that she was a woman. Her cultivation base was only at the level of human king, similar to Su Yu and his group. But for some unknown reason, the moment Su Yu saw the girl, his heart trembled violently, and he had an indescribable feeling of fear. But when he used his soul eyes to scan the girl, there was nothing special about her. Su Yu's eyes flashed with suspicion. "Humph, the two of you really dared to come. Where is my junior?" An unkind gaze shot toward them coldly. Jing Zijing wore a cold smile as he looked over. Beside him, there was a bald youth who had both his hands in his sleeves. He carried a big black knife on his back, and his face was ferocious. His gaze was ferocious, and his murderous aura was strong. There was also a bloody smell coming from his body. Under Su Yu's gaze, the ferocious bald youth was surrounded by a layer of faint blood-colored air current. This was the blood energy that had accumulated after killing so many people. Chapter 536. The King of Killers of the Yufeng faction. Not far from Su Yu, an 18-year-old girl subconsciously glanced at the fierce-looking young man who was walking over. She subconsciously cried out in alarm, and her tone was filled with fear. As soon as he said this, the divine sparrow stage, which was filled with people, suddenly quietened down. In that moment, everyone fell silent, each taking a distance away from the King of Killers, not daring to look at him. This person's name was Zhou Jin, and he was a famous outer sanctum disciple of the Yufeng faction. It was rumored that he was one of the 3 outer sanctum disciples with the highest hopes of entering the inner sanctum. He had caught the eye of a divine master elder, and once he entered the inner sanctum, he would be taken in as a disciple. His future was bright. In this mysterious heavenly stage competition, he had suppressed all of the geniuses of Jiuzhou. He was as famous as Chou Ziming, and they were known as the 2 gods of killing. In terms of killing, Chou Ziming was only famous for his cruel methods. But Zhou Jin was famous for his bloodlust, and he would kill at the slightest provocation. It was rumored that the people he killed could not even compare to the inner sanctum disciples of the Yufeng faction, and he was undoubtedly the king of killers. Many people had strong opinions about him, and it was rumored that some inner sanctum disciples felt that he was too arrogant and wanted to teach him a lesson. But in the end, the inner sanctum disciple, who had already broken through to the fairy realm, was injured by Zhou Jin and had to escape. The rumors about his abilities became extremely mysterious. It was rumored that he could have broken through to the fairy realm at any time, but for special reasons, he had purposely suppressed it to the level of half-fairy realm, waiting for the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion to carry out a secret mission for the elder who was about to take him in as a disciple. Creak! Suddenly, Zhou Jin cast a sidelong glance at the girl who had just spoken. A thin line of blood suddenly appeared between the girl's brows, spreading from her brows to her abdomen. Then, the girl's eyes darkened, and her body split into 2 with a line of blood at the center. Blood splattered everywhere, quickly turning the ground into a pool of blood. Just like that, this demigod-level girl was mysteriously split into 2, dying an extremely bloody death. She had merely been glanced at by Zhou Jin. Such a bloody and cruel scene caused the spectators to shudder, all of them looking away. Even looking at the scene required a lot of courage, much less speaking up for the girl. Otherwise, their fates would not be much different from the girl's, mysteriously split in 2. Su Yu was one of the few people who had seen the entire process clearly. The girl did not die from that gaze, but from the black knife on Zhou Jin's back. In the eyes of ordinary people, Zhou Jin merely glanced sideways at the girl. However, in Su Yu's eyes, Zhou Jin had completed 3 actions in the blink of an eye. Drawing the saber, attacking, sheathing the saber, everything was done in one go, as smooth as flowing water. His speed was even faster than lightning. Ordinary people would not be able to detect his movements and would think that the girl had mysteriously died. Xia Jingyu, who was standing behind Su Yu, couldn't help but shiver slightly. What a powerful blade technique! Its might isn't any weaker than a fairy's. Even if I have the feather needle of darkness, I still might not be a match for her. No matter how strong the feather needle of darkness was, there was still a limit. We've really provoked a troublesome fellow. Xia Jingyu looked at the innocent girl who had died a tragic death, and her heart was filled with anxiety. This person was extremely ruthless and lived up to his reputation as the Killer King. Su Yu's gaze turned grave. Another Chou Ziming? To be precise, he was even more terrifying than Chou Ziming. However, Su Yu did not think much of Zhou Jin's ruthlessness. Even though he was known as the Killer King, from the looks of the girl who had died a tragic death, the people he had killed were far weaker than him. He would fly into a thunderous rage at the slightest offense. He looked powerful, but in reality, this was the behavior of the weak. Those who were truly powerful would not kill the weak to raise their prestige. This person was merely a coward who had been suppressed by the inner sanctum disciples for years and had taken his anger out on the weak. Such a person was not worthy of Su Yu's attention. Are you the one who injured the people of the Yufeng faction? Yes or no? Answer me. Zhou Jin's voice was loud and wild, filled with killing intent. Su Yu did not reply. He flicked out a small fireball with his finger, burning the girl's corpse to ashes. This was to prevent her corpse from being exposed in the wilderness. Creak, Zhou Jin's expression was ferocious. His figure did not move, but in reality, he had already struck with his knife. However, in the instant he struck with his knife, Su Yu's body had already been covered by a layer of malevolent armor surrounded by black fog. With an intense vibration, the demonic fog on the armor surged, then immediately calmed down. All that was left was the remnant of the knife energy, spreading through the air, sending chills down everyone's spines. Zhou Jin's ferocious eyes were filled with a shred of surprise. The fact that the other party was able to block his sword so easily surprised him. A semi-manufactured spiritual artifact armor. Not a bad treasure, I want it. Zhou Jin laughed sinisterly, his laughter reverberating in the silent divine sparrow stage, sending shivers down everyone's spines. But everyone present pretended not to see anything, no one daring to question him. Even if they also coveted the armor. I'll give you a way out. Offer up the woman behind you, the armor, that jade needle, and one of your arms. You can live. Anything less and you die. Zhou Jin's words were domineering and cruel. Zheng Zhijing, who was behind him, had a look of regret in his eyes. After Zhou Jin had seen the true appearance of the cloaked lady, he would never allow himself to touch her again. She was a fairy from the heavens. Su Yu's eyes swept over, calmly saying, Why? Because you can only bully the weak? Because you are a cowardly good-for-nothing? His words were like thunder to the ears of the crowd. Many of them opened their eyes wide, looking at Su Yu in disbelief. Did he think that a single armor was enough to fight against the king of killers? If that was the case, he was too naive, so naive that it bordered on stupidity. However, when they noticed his attire, many people felt relieved. In the end, he is still relying on his faction, using the returning principal palace as a shield, thinking that Zhou Jin would not dare do anything to him. But relying on the faction, isn't that also a cowardly good-for-nothing? Zhou Jin laughed. His smile was even more sinister, with a hint of malevolence. Very well, you are the only person who dares to say such things. I have decided I will take back the choice I gave you. You only have one choice now, and that is death. What would come would eventually come. He might as well settle this problem as soon as possible. This person is right, you are indeed a good-for-nothing. Just when the two of them were ready to fight, a clear and melodious voice like that of an oriole suddenly came from outside the crowd. The crowd could not help but shudder, moving away to avoid being misunderstood by Zhou Jin. Behind the crowd, a 14-year-old girl wearing a pink dress and wearing a bamboo hat stood there. Young girl wearing a bamboo hat? She was the girl that Su Yu had noticed, the one that he was extremely wary of. Under the gaze of the crowd, the girl was neither servile nor overbearing, quietly standing in her original spot. Her bright eyes under the bamboo hat looked at Zhou Jin quietly, her lips carrying a hint of disdain. Chapter 537. A formless knife energy pierced through the air, slashing toward the young lady. Su Yu cursed inwardly. He wanted to act, but it was too late. But the next moment, Su Yu's pupils shrank. The young lady had only extended 2 fingers to clamp down on the terrifying knife energy, which could cut through anything. She then rubbed her fingers together, and the knife energy was instantly reduced to dust. In the eyes of outsiders, the young lady had not moved at all. They did not realize that there had been an unknown exchange between Zhou Jin and the young lady. The expression of Zhou Jin, who was originally filled with murderous intent, changed greatly. His voice suddenly became extremely serious. "You are Shangguan Qing'er of the Red Blood Palace." The girl in the bamboo hat raised her hand slightly and took off the bamboo hat, revealing an incomparably delicate and pretty face that was both happy and angry at the same time. Her facial features were like a sculpture, extremely three-dimensional. Her skin was rosy, and her eyes were bright. 2 locks of hair fell beside her ears, gently swaying in the wind. She was dressed in a pink dress that was simple yet luxurious, and it accentuated her slender figure to the fullest. At first glance, she was like a pink lotus that had emerged from the mud, extremely fresh. What a delicate and exquisite lady! But Su Yu was even more surprised by her identity. The Red Blood Palace, one of the 2 superpowers that controlled all the powerhouses in the 18 Blessed and Heavenly Lands? The outer sanctum elder of the Purple Cloud Palace, as well as the host of the Moon Glow Clear ship, Lu Chui. Su Yu had already met her. Due to a freak combination of factors, they had even had an unforgettable relationship. Now, someone from the Red Blood Palace had also appeared in the mysterious Heavenly Divine Pavilion. Demon woman, Shangguan Qing'er. Gasps of shock could be heard from the crowd. Most of them were filled with respect and admiration from the men. "It's her?" Su Yu was shocked. He had actually seen this face before. On the mysterious heavenly stage of the Zhenlong continent, there were hundreds of statues, each of which was the strongest genius that had appeared in the mysterious Heavenly Divine Pavilion. The strongest of the previous generation was a 14-year-old young lady. That young lady was exactly the same as the Shangguan Qing'er before him. As expected, this demon woman is also in the 8th level of the Divine Pavilion. A few gasps could be heard from the crowd. Looking at this lady, everyone was filled with respect, as if they were looking at a queen. In the 18 Blessed and Heavenly Lands, Shangguan Qing'er could be said to be a proud daughter of heaven. She was once an outer sanctum disciple of the soul-seizing palace, and she was found to have an ordinary aptitude. As such, her chances of breaking through to the fairy realm were extremely slim. However, this woman had killed many people in the previous mysterious Heavenly Divine Pavilion. The 18 factions had been entrusted with an important task, and the 18 outer sanctum disciples, who viewed them as future inner sanctum disciples, had surrounded and attacked her. However, the final result shocked the 18 Blessed and Heavenly Lands. Everyone had been defeated by her. Following that, she charged into the stone statue forest in an invincible manner, becoming one of the few people who had successfully charged into the stone statue forest in countless years, completing a magnificent feat that shocked the outside world. After they left this place, the soul-seizing palace conducted a new test on her aptitude, and they were shocked to discover that this girl actually possessed a faint trace of the ancient bloodline. The ancient bloodline was also a legendary bloodline in the 9 prefectures. It almost only existed in ancient books. Once the news was leaked, the other sects were all alarmed. In fact, the White Lotus faction and the soul-seizing palace even went up to him directly to ask for him. The other sects were also getting restless, showing signs of fighting over this ancient bloodline's spiritual body. In the end, the soul-seizing palace's leader, the Red Blood Palace, appeared. An old monster who had been training for an unknown number of years brought her back to the faction and took her in as a registered disciple. It was rumored that the old monster had already comprehended the divine master realm and was an ancient being who could fly to the all-creations realm. In this way, the cruel battle between the open and the veiled was finally resolved. In other words, Shangguan Qing'er was now a registered disciple of an all-creations strong martial artist. With such an honor, even if her cultivation was taken away, who in the 18 blessed and heavenly lands would dare to provoke her? Moreover, Shangguan Qing'er possessed the ancient bloodline, and her abilities were invincible among her peers. Who could be a match for her? Even Zhou Jin, who boasted that no one below the fairy realm could be a match for him, felt suffocated in front of Shangguan Qing'er. On the mysterious heavenly stage, he had once confidently fought against her, but in the end she had defeated him within 3 moves. Such a tragic experience made Zhou Jin realize that the gap between them was not any smaller than the gap between him and a middle-stage fairy. "I said that you are a coward. Do you have a problem with that?" Shangguan Qing'er walked over. Zhou Jin's heart was pounding, and his face was full of fear. "I was reckless. Please forgive me, Fairy Shangguan." Even someone as ferocious as Zhou Jin cupped his fists and apologized sincerely. Zheng Zhijing also lowered his head hurriedly, not daring to look at Shangguan Qing'er in the eyes. Although this woman was as beautiful as a fairy, he did not dare to have any thoughts about her. Shangguan Qing'er looked around. Wherever she looked, everyone felt offended, and they all lowered their heads. "We are all people of Jiuzhou, so we should be united in times of hardship. Before the legacy is opened, no internal strife is allowed." Shangguan Qing'er's pleasant voice fell into everyone's ears like a warning, and no one dared to resist. Su Yu's eyes narrowed slightly. How could such a person appear? The Ghost King also narrowed his eyes, and a fearful light shone in the depths of his pupils. At that moment, Shangguan Qing'er's gaze turned and landed on Su Yu. Her delicate face revealed a gentle smile, like that of a little girl next door. "Brother Black Snow, long time no see." As she spoke, her delicate body, which was as fresh as a lotus, pounced into Su Yu's embrace like a little bird returning to its nest. Su Yu froze, instinctively avoiding her. But she naturally hugged Su Yu's arm. Her fair face was flushed red. At that moment the entire place was dead silent. They looked at the cute and helpless Shangguan Qing'er, dumbfounded. The proud daughter of heaven, the ancient bloodline spiritual body that countless geniuses looked up to, the usually cold Shangguan Qing'er. She had actually become like this. This unexpected scene made everyone's jaws drop. Su Yu pulled his arm away, but she hugged him tightly, showing no signs of letting go. Patter, with a light sound, Xia Jingyu's fingers stiffened, and the feather needle of darkness in her palm fell to the ground. Her entire body was cold, and her entire body was stiff. Her eyes were filled with disbelief, shock, and a rare jealousy. "Brother Yu! Who is she?" Xia Jingyu tried her best to control herself, but her voice was trembling uncontrollably. Her fair palms gradually clenched. Her lowered head was covered in shadows, and no one could see her expression clearly. But Su Yu could feel Xia Jingyu's suppressed anger. "Who are you? Didn't you see me acknowledge Brother Black Snow? How insensible!" Shangguan Qing'er wrinkled her nose, grunting in dissatisfaction. "Brother Black Snow, who is this woman?" Sensing the anger in the air, how could Su Yu continue to be ambiguous? With a flash of lightning around him, he forcefully broke free from Shangguan Qing'er's grasp, teleporting to Xia Jingyu's side. Looking at Shangguan Qing'er, his expression gradually turned cold. "I am Yin. I have never met you before, so please respect yourself." Hearing this, Xia Jingyu froze. Her eyes, which were filled with anger, were filled with doubt. Shangguan Qing'er's eyes were filled with surprise. Su Yu being able to break free from her grasp was unexpected. "Haha, Brother Black Snow does not know Qing'er, but Qing'er has known Brother Black Snow for a long time. I have been ordered by my teacher to invite you to meet her. Shangguan Qing'er took out a compass, and the needle on the compass was pointing at Su Yu accurately. Without a doubt, he was the ancient bloodline spiritual body that her master, Mo Tianxian, was looking for. He had the true ancient bloodline. It was not like her, who only had a trace of blood. The only strange thing was that her master had said that there was a high possibility that the other party was a woman, but the compass was pointing at the Dark Demon King. In the dragon abyss of the 9 underworlds, Su Yu and Xia Jingyu had been together. Their names had long been known to Mo Tianxian, who existed in the unseen world, but she could not be certain which one of them had the ancient bloodline. Hence, she had given him a compass that could sense the ancient bloodline. Now that the compass was pointing at the Black Snow Demon King, there was no doubt that he had the ancient bloodline. Su Yu was the person she was looking for. Master? All creation's strong martial artist? Su Yu was shocked. When had he entered the line of sight of an all creation's old monster? Could it be that he had obtained Tian Jizi's legacy and an emperor-based saint artifact? If that was the case, he could not follow Shangguan Qing'er to Jiuzhou no matter what. I'm sorry, I do not know your master. I appreciate her kindness, but forgive me for not being able to comply, Su Yu said bluntly. Hearing this, the crowd felt as if they had been struck by lightning. There was actually someone who dared to reject the invitation of an all-creation's old monster. Shangguan Qing'er's smile froze. She had not expected Su Yu to reject her. Master has instructed me to invite you to the Red Blood Palace no matter what. Brother Black Snow, you better not make things difficult for me. Shangguan Qing'er was half joking and half threatening. Su Yu laughed. As long as you have the ability. What a joke. He was from the Zhenlong continent. No matter how the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion transported him, he would be transported back to the Zhenlong continent. No matter how capable Shangguan Qing'er was, it was impossible for her to bring Su Yu to Jiuzhou. Shangguan Qing'er's eyes flashed dangerously. Brother Black Snow, I'm afraid it's not up to you anymore. Su Yu's gaze turned serious. Up to you. If you want to bring me away, let's see how capable you are first. The harmonious scene just a moment ago had turned hostile in the blink of an eye. Brother Black Snow, you seem to be very confident in yourself. Shangguan Qing'er suddenly smiled sweetly. Su Yu calmly replied, I was only resisting because I had no choice. What a good no choice. But Brother Black Snow, before we make our move, shouldn't we invite a certain gentleman to come down first? Shangguan Qing'er suddenly smiled mysteriously. Su Yu was slightly stunned. He swept his soul eyes over and looked at the sky abruptly. His pupils shrank slightly. She raised her head abruptly and looked at the sky above their heads. With a wave of her sleeves, the dry clouds rolled back and the space shattered inch by inch. The mass of clouds above their heads was instantly shattered by a great force and turned into nothingness. Then, 2 figures appeared from within the mass of clouds. One was a middle-aged man with a goatee, while the other was a youth with an ice-cold expression. One of them had a cultivation base that Su Yu could not see through, while the other was a vital energy crystal master. Chapter 538. In the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion, he was undoubtedly a king. He was a fairy without any restrictions, and he could use his fairy powers at will. Even Lu Chui, a divine master who had entered this place, could not compare. The appearance of this person immediately caused panic. Bai Yijian, the king of the guardians. A young man's eyes were filled with fear and disbelief. He really broke through to the fairy realm. Panic spread like a plague. The legend of the king of the guardians had existed for a long time. It was said that he was the strongest existence among the guardians. He alone led over 100 guardians to guard the 5 peaks. His abilities had always been a legend, as no one had ever been able to defeat him and reach the final legacy of materials. Even the previous invincible king, Shangguan Qing'er, had returned empty-handed after crossing the stone statue forest. It was said that she had been defeated by Bai Yijian in only 3 moves. At that time, there were rumors that Bai Yijian might have broken through to the fairy realm. Now, the undisguised true energy and the terrifying spiritual energy proved that everything was correct. He had indeed broken through to the fairy realm. He was almost invincible in the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion. Long time no see, Shangguan Qing'er. Bai Yijian's white robes fluttered in the wind, a faint smile on his face. He only looked at her, and no one else could be seen in his eyes. That was disregard, and it was also natural arrogance. In the eyes of the fairy realm, a mere half-god could not be tolerated. Only Shangguan Qing'er was worthy of his attention. That was all. I haven't seen you for 10 years, and your abilities have grown a lot. Bai Yijian smiled, speaking as if there was no one else around. In the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion, time passed 10 times faster than in Jiuzhou. Bai Yijian had spent 10 years, while Jiuzhou had only spent 1 year. Shangguan Qing'er's beautiful eyes were filled with awe. You have also broken through to the fairy realm. You are even stronger than before. Didn't you also break through to the fairy realm? It looks like you have the guidance of an expert, and you are not affected by the mysterious heavenly palace. You must be an all-creation old monster comparable to Tianjizi, right? Bai Yijian had actually revealed her cultivation level, as well as the shadow of an all-creation old monster behind her. Su Yu's heart trembled. Shangguan Qing'er had indeed broken through to the fairy realm. No wonder she gave him such pressure. However, what was even more shocking was that with the help of the all-creation's old monster, this woman was not affected by the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion and was able to display her true abilities to her heart's content. If that was the case, it would be even more troublesome. The reason why Su Yu was able to subdue Xinggu was largely due to the fact that her cultivation had been suppressed. If not for this restriction, it would have been hard to say whether he would have been able to win, let alone subdue her. Shangguan Qing'er did not mind. She said calmly, "This time, I have another mission. For the time being, I will not interfere with the inheritance that you are guarding. If you do not have the determination to fight me, then immediately retreat 5,000 kilometers away. I do not like to be disturbed." She was determined to bring Su Yu to Jiuzhou, and she had even given up on the legacy of materials. Since they were both fairies, Bai Yijian would probably not want to be entangled with Shangguan Qing'er. After all, there was an all-creation old monster behind her, and she would definitely have some defensive treasures. "I'm sorry, but I can't agree. No one here is allowed to leave," Bai Yijian said coldly. His aura was turbulent, and his expression was resolute. Shangguan Qing'er's expression turned cold. Could it be that, after your cultivation level has improved, you want to kill everyone who entered this year? The guards had always been merciless towards those who had barged into the 5 Peaks. Now that Bai Yijian's cultivation level had improved, and he had even broken out of his isolation, it was hard to guarantee that he would not start a massacre. If I wanted to start a massacre, I would have killed all of you 10 years ago. Why would I wait until now? Bai Yijian let out a grunt. What he said was true. In the previous year, Shangguan Qing'er had suppressed everyone, and it was not impossible for Bai Yijian, who was stronger than her, to kill all of them. Then what do you mean? Shangguan Qing'er could not help but crease her brows. Bai Yijian had a smile on his face. He looked around and laughed heartily. Of course it is to welcome all the geniuses of the faction to open the legacy of materials with me. Shangguan Qing'er raised her eyebrows, her eyes filled with confusion. After a moment of silence, the crowd burst into an uproar. What? How is that possible? The legacy of materials is taken by the guards for their own use. In name, they are the guards, but in reality, the materials inside belong to them. How could they be willing to take them out and open it with us? After the uproar, someone asked with a passionate gaze, May I ask if this is true? Bai Yijin replied, Do you think that there is a need for me to lie to all of you? As a fairy, there was indeed no reason for him to lie to them. Hearing this, the crowd could not contain their joy. However, since they were known as the geniuses of the factions, they would naturally not be so brainless. The guards definitely had their own reasons for doing so. Indeed, Bai Yijin continued, however, there is a condition to be fulfilled in order to enter the legacy. The crowd gradually quietened down. Things were indeed not as simple as they seemed. That is, to be able to cross the stone statue forest. What I need is not a useless person, but someone with a certain level of ability. Only then can I open the last place in the legacy. Whether or not you can cross the stone statue forest will be the test for all of you, Bai Yijin said casually. Stone statue forest? Hearing this, most of the people's faces sank. If they had the ability to cross the stone statue forest, why would they have waited until now? This condition was enough to disqualify most of the people. They did not even have the heart to try. Jing Zijing stared at the stone statue forest and said in a low voice, Senior, are you joking? In the past, only a few people have been able to cross the stone statue forest. How many of us have absolute confidence that we can cross it? In other words, Bai Yijin was making fun of them. The rest of the people also revealed looks of dissatisfaction. If this is Senior Bai's request, please forgive us for not taking the risk. Most of them had not gathered here for the legacy materials. The danger of the stone statue forest was only suitable for outstanding outer sanctum disciples like Shangguan Qing'er. The rest of them had no intention of crossing it. Most of them had gathered here to wait for the exchange festival that would take place in 5 days. Now, who would risk their lives to cross the stone statue forest at the last juncture of the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion? Seeing the expressions on the faces of the crowd, Bai Yijin frowned slightly. He muttered to himself for a moment before saying, If that is the case, I will make another sacrifice. The top 5 people who take the shortest amount of time will be qualified to enter the mysterious heavenly spiritual pool of the guard. There, they will be able to cleanse their body's spiritual energy and increase their cultivation base. Of course, if one has a complete vital energy crystal, he or she might be able to break through the shackles and reach the level of the fairy realm. Once he said this, there was a huge uproar. Mysterious heavenly spiritual pool? Senior Bai, are you sure what you said is true? The crowd became even more excited than when they were sharing the legacy materials. Excited faces could be seen everywhere. Chapter 539. Bai Yijin, what are you planning? Shangguan Qing'er's face was filled with bewilderment, and her eyes were filled with deep shock. She said in a puzzled tone, The mysterious heavenly spirit pool is a sacred place that Senior Tianjizi left behind for the Guardians. Not to mention outsiders, even among the Guardians, only a few people have the privilege to enter it to train, right? A sacred place left behind by Tianjizi? It looked like Tianjizi did not forget to take care of his disciples and descendants before he died. However, these descendants had forgotten their ancestors' will and were now plotting to pass on the legacy. I am a man of my word. Whether you believe me or not is up to you. From now on, the 5 people who take the least amount of time to cross the stone statue forest will be able to enter our sacred place. Bai Yijin calmly said. The crowd, who were initially uninterested in the stone statue forest, became excited, as if they had been injected with adrenaline. Just as Su Yu and Xia Jingyu were feeling puzzled, Shangguan Qing'er walked over and said with a smile, Brother Black Snow, if you want to go, Qing'er can bring you along. Qing'er can also reluctantly bring this woman along as well. Her words were heard by the people in the surroundings, and there was another round of noise. If that was the case, 3 out of the 5 spots would be taken. Shangguan Qing'er had successfully crossed the stone statue before she had even reached the fairy realm. Bringing 2 people along might be a little taxing, but it would not affect her from entering the top 5. Su Yu creased his brows. No need. There is no need to take such a risk. They were still unclear of the true intentions of this sacred place. A simple promise of purifying spirit energy to increase one's cultivation level was not enough for Su Yu to judge its importance. Brother Black Snow, you must quickly make up your mind. The mysterious heavenly spirit pool was created by an all-creation old monster. To a human king like you, breaking through to the level of half-god is not an issue. If you are lucky, you might even be able to form your first vital energy crystal. Shangguan Qing'er playfully blinked her eyes. What? Su Yu and Xia Jingyu were shocked. In the Zhenlong continent, breaking through from human king to half-god required at least a year of accumulation. This was limited to special beings like Su Yu and her. Forming a vital energy crystal from half-god to half-god required another 2 years of accumulation. The spiritual pool before their eyes could be easily achieved. In fact, Su Yu and she could easily surpass the half-god realm and start to condense vital energy crystals. Such a fortuitous encounter could only be chanced upon but not sought after. Brother Black Snow, what do you think? Shangguan Qing'er seemed to have seen through Su Yu's thoughts, and she said with a smile. Xia Jingyu glanced at Shangguan Qing'er and calmed herself down. At this point, she naturally understood that Su Yu was indeed a complete stranger to her. Everything was just because the girl was trying to be friendly with him. Brother Yu, let me try first. Xia Jingyu pondered for a moment, then took out the feather needle of darkness. With this needle in hand, if she strengthened her water path, her strength would be comparable to a half-fairy with 2 crystals. She really didn't want Su Yu to owe this young girl a favor because of her. Shangguan Qing'er glanced at her and said calmly, with your power, you are just sending yourself to your death. Do you think that you can block the petrifying energy that the worms spew out? The petrifying gas isn't a gas on the surface. It's actually a mental attack. Your water path is just a physical attack. It has no effect on the petrifying gas. Spiritual attack? Su Yu was surprised. It was no wonder that even a fairy like Xingguo was petrified. If one were to barge in unknowingly, it would be difficult to defend against it. If you have a soul defense treasure on you, pretend that I didn't say anything. Shangguan Qing'er had a faint smile. Xia Jingyu creased her brows. Even though she was proficient in many techniques, she didn't have the talent for souls. At this moment, someone finally couldn't resist the temptation of the mysterious heavenly spiritual pool and made a move. A 1-crystal half-fairy carefully walked to the edge of the divine sparrow stage. Below him was the stone statue forest, which was covered in dense fog. Many geniuses had been sealed there forever, becoming stone statues that could be faintly seen within the fog. The crowd gradually quietened down, all of them looking at the half-fairy who had tried first. The 1-crystal half-fairy looked at the ghost-like stone statues, as though he was facing a great enemy. He gathered all of his spirit energy and vital energy on his body, acting as his first line of defense. He then took out a powerful defensive talisman and pasted it on his forehead. The talisman immediately released a layer of dark yellow light, enveloping his body. A fairy realm defensive talisman? The crowd was secretly shocked. This half-fairy, whose cultivation level wasn't considered to be at the peak, could actually take out a fairy realm defensive talisman. This shocked everyone. At this moment, the other party took out a pair of wheels. He stepped on them, causing them to spin rapidly. The air waves that were created caused a large part of the dense fog to disperse. A treasure that can increase one's speed? Could it be that semi-manufactured spiritual artifact, the wind-stepping wheels, that is said to be unrivaled in the world? How did this item appear in the hands of a wandering martial artist? Wait! Could he be the 18 blessed and heavenly lands' rapist, Qianli Xiang? It is rumored that there will be a woman in the future. Countless women from good families have been killed by him, and even the female cultivators of the 18 blessed and heavenly lands have been killed by him. They are listed as evil cultivators that the 18 blessed and heavenly lands must kill. She was once chased by a fairy, but she managed to escape easily by relying on the wind treading wheels. The crowd's hearts sank. With this person's famous light body technique, he might really be able to pass through the stone statue forest quickly and reach the land of legacy. Quick, stop him. Someone let out a low grunt, his figure grabbing toward Qian Lixiang like lightning. Dozens of figures moved upon hearing the news. They could not give Qian Lixiang a chance, as he could snatch one of the spots. Qian Lixiang was already prepared. He laughed, releasing a red fog around his body, covering his figure. The wind-stepping wheels under his feet started spinning rapidly. His figure disappeared from his original position. When he reappeared, he was already 1,000 feet away, having crossed a large section of the stone statue forest. In the blink of an eye, he had crossed another 1,000 feet. By the time the worms in the stone statue forest reacted, Qian Lixiang had already leaped 10,000 feet, crossing a third of the area. Su Yu was secretly surprised. Previously, when he was in the stone statue forest, he had already felt that there was some sort of suppression near the stone statue forest. His vital energy and spiritual energy could not circulate smoothly, and his body technique's speed was obviously suppressed. Qian Lixiang's wind-stepping wheels were, after all, a semi-manufactured spiritual artifact. His speed was definitely not limited to this. Shangguan Qing'er nodded. Yes, your speed is not bad. You are much stronger than I was back then. Your speed is indeed not bad. Bai Yijian's eyes lit up. Although his body technique was obviously slow, in the eyes of the two of them, it was not bad. It could be seen that flying in the stone statue forest was indeed difficult. But, if it is only at this level... Bai Yijian shook his head indifferently. At that moment, Qian Lixiang was treading on thin ice, flying quickly above the stone statue forest. Every time he passed by, the worms would react and spit out fog, which did not pose much of a threat to him. At that moment, he had already crossed a third of the area and was about to enter the central area. However, at that moment, a large amount of gray fog erupted in front of him, as if a volcano had erupted. It was as if a light screen had appeared in front of him. Qian Lixiang's expression changed abruptly. When he looked over, he saw a giant worm, which was more than twice the size of a normal worm, spitting out a large amount of fog. At the same time that Qian Lixiang's expression changed, he took out a talisman and tore it open, creating a blue hurricane in an attempt to sweep away the fog. However, the fog did not move at all. It allowed the hurricane to blow, and it was not affected in the slightest. Qian Lixiang's eyes flashed with unwillingness, and he could only choose to retreat. However, when he retreated, he realized that his path of retreat had already been surrounded by the worms. Shocked, Qian Lixiang dashed towards the sky. However, he had only flown 1,000 feet before he crashed into an invisible, transparent light screen, which caused him to fall back down. Below him, the entire sky was filled with gray fog, which had wrapped around him. The fog ignored the protective light screen on the surface of his body, as well as the vital energy and spiritual energy defense on the surface of his body. It landed directly on his body. Qian Lixiang screamed in extreme fear, as his body suddenly turned into stone and fell from the sky. Slap! He fell from the sky and landed on the ground, directly turning into broken stones. He had died on the spot. If a normal stone statue had the spiritual liquid of a female worm, it would still be able to recover its physical body and see the light of day again. However, Qian Lixiang's death was undeniable. The rapist of his generation had been smashed into pieces just like that. The entire crowd was silent as they stared at Qian Lixiang, who had died without a proper burial. Many geniuses, who had been eager to try, felt as if they had been doused with a bucket of cold water. His death had dispelled most of the people's greed. The stone statue forest was too terrifying. Bai Yijian calmly said, "If you do not wish to die even faster, do not fly too high." Shangguan Qing'er was not surprised, as she looked at Su Yu with a smile. Brother Black Snow, what do you think? Have you considered it? Was there even a need to consider? After witnessing this scene with their own eyes, unless one had extraordinary abilities, who would dare to attempt the cruel stone statue forest? Many people looked at Su Yu with envious gazes. Was Shangguan Qing'er the only person present who had absolute confidence? There is no need. I alone am enough, Su Yu calmly said, pulling Xia Jingyu to the edge of the divine sparrow stage. This scene caused everyone to be shocked once again. This lad is extraordinarily courageous. I wonder where he got his confidence from, daring to cross the stone statue forest. Most importantly, he brought someone with him. Bai Yijian was shocked. He could not help but size up Su Yu. After confirming that Su Yu only had the cultivation level of a human king, he creased his brows. Young man, if you do not understand the stone statue forest, you should understand more before taking action. There are seals around the stone statue forest, suppressing the movement techniques of those who enter. If you bring another person with you, the power of the suppression will not be as simple as 1 + 1. Instead, it will multiply. With your cultivation level, you will not be much faster than an ordinary person if you bring another person with you. I advise you not to send yourself to your death. He was not worried about Su Yu's safety. Rather, if he failed again and someone died, it would cause even more people to give up. This would greatly affect his ability to gather more people. Hearing this, Su Yu's expression was calm. I know what I am doing. If there is nothing else, I will set off. As Su Yu spoke casually, he pulled Xia Jingyu along with him and left in front of the crowd's gazes. Chapter 540. So stubborn. Shangguan Qing'er creased her nose. Based on her experience, unless Su Yu's ancient bloodline was special and could counter the petrifying energy, he would not even be able to protect himself, much less bring a person along. But she could not watch as Su Yu sent himself to his death. She had no choice but to personally send them over. With a flash of light, Shangguan Qing'er flew to her side, as if she was going to bring them over. Her action shocked everyone present, causing them to shiver. Shangguan Qing'er was indeed going to attack. There were only 2 spots left in the top 5. Jing Zijing's eyes were filled with anxiety. Senior, I will go over first. Having gotten Senior Zhou Jin's approval, Zheng Zijing immediately took out a white necklace. It seemed to be carved from some special wood, releasing a cool aura that made one feel refreshed. Zheng Zijing wore the necklace around his neck, forming signs with both hands. The long knife on his back was unsheathed with a clang. It grew in the wind, becoming a zhang long, floating beneath his feet. With a tap of his foot, Zheng Zijing leaped onto the long knife, turning it into a blur as it pierced through the air. His speed was not any slower than Qian Lixiang's. In fact, it was even faster. The secret technique of the Yufeng faction, the blade manipulation technique. Someone exclaimed in surprise. The Yufeng faction specializes in controlling weapons, especially the Imperial Sword Manipulation Technique and Blade Manipulation Technique. Taking a person's head from 1,000 miles away is as easy as taking something out of one's pocket. Hence, their speed is extremely fast. Blade Manipulation Technique? Su Yu still remembered Zhou Jin's lightning-fast blade technique. A normal person could not even see his movements, showing how fast his movement technique was. The faction was named Yufeng for a reason. Shangguan Qing'er, who was about to bring Su Yu and Zhou Jin out, stopped, waiting calmly. Let him pass first. The restrictions in the stone statue forest are very sensitive. The more people that enter, the more ferocious the petrifying worms will be. There is no need to fight needlessly and put yourself in danger. Looking left and right, as expected, after Zheng Zijing stepped out, no one else dared to step into it. Zheng Zijing's movement technique was extremely fast. Even though he was slowed down in the stone statue forest, he was still faster than Qian Lixiang. In just a few breaths' time, he had crossed a third of the distance. The insects behind him couldn't keep up with his movements at all, and the petrifying gas they spat out couldn't compete with them at all. Just as they were about to step into the central area, the petrifying worm that was twice the size of a normal worm appeared as expected. Like a volcanic eruption, a large amount of petrifying gas soared into the sky, completely blocking the path ahead. How similar was this scene to what Qian Lixiang had encountered earlier? What was different was that Zheng Zhijing did not retreat. Instead, the true energy in his body surged outward. It did not condense into a protective true energy, and his body did not have any defenses. Instead, he infused his zhenqi into the necklace around his neck. In an instant, a snow-white stream of air slowly spread out in the form of ripples. The snow-white air current was extremely unique. Even the people far above the divine sparrow stage could feel a cooling sensation in their souls. His spirit was refreshed and his exhaustion was gone. It was extremely strange. What was even more shocking was that wherever the snow-white airflow passed, the petrification qi automatically retreated. This scene shocked many people once again. The ferocity of the petrification qi could disregard any object. What kind of divine item was that snow-white necklace? It looked like it was extremely effective against the petrification qi. Zheng Zhijing's eyes were filled with excitement as he passed through the dissipating wall of petrification qi and quickly stepped into the central area. Hiss, like a group of snakes hissing, his steps seemed to have startled countless petrifying insects. In the midst of the rolling fog, a worm that was 3 times the size of a normal worm led 10 other worms to spit out petrifying gas towards the sky. Being petrified twice as fast was still manageable. The petrification gas that was spewing out, under the snow-white airflow, quickly disappeared like snow melting in spring. But the petrifying gas that the worm that was 3 times the size of a normal worm spat out was extremely dense. It was almost like a liquid, and its color was also very dark. When the snow-white airflow swept past, it only caused the spreading of the petrification qi to slow down a little, but it did not suppress it too much. Zheng Zhijing's expression instantly turned serious. He did not dare to be careless. Taking advantage of the moment when the petrification qi froze, he moved like the wind and passed through a small gap in the light barrier. It was extremely dangerous for him to pass through the central area. In an instant, he had passed through the central area and had passed through 2/3 of the area. Such a shocking result caused the geniuses at the Divine Sparrow stage to exclaim in shock. Throughout the years there were very few who could reach this stage. Zheng Zhijing is much more powerful than we expected. Someone exclaimed, his gaze fixed on Zheng Zhijing, who was in the fog. In the last third of the area, Zheng Zhijing took a deep breath and was about to pass through it in one breath. But at this moment, in the fog, a stone statue that had been standing there for a long time suddenly moved. Ever since the crowd had arrived at the Divine Sparrow stage, they had noticed the stone statue at the end of the stone statue forest. Compared to a normal stone statue, it was even taller and more majestic. They had thought that it was a powerful genius that had died in hatred. But, since it was a stone statue, it could not move at all. Shangguan Qing'er revealed a rare serious expression. It has finally appeared, King of Petrifying Worms. Whether or not we can pass through the stone statue forest depends on this worm. King of Petrifying Worms, could it be the mother worm? The spirit fluid that it secreted could dispel the power of petrification, and was also the key to Xing Ji's recovery. But its size was so huge that it made one's hair stand on end. Even a petrifying worm, which was 3 times the size of a normal worm, was only as thick as a wrist. But this worm king was even bigger than a normal human. It was hard to imagine what the petrifying gas that it secreted would look like. Creak! The huge petrified worm shook, and it let out a sharp cry. Instantly, the entire stone statue forest was covered by a petrifying gas. The expressions of the geniuses on the Divine Sparrow stage changed, and they all retreated, looking at the scene in the forest in shock. It could easily turn the entire stone statue forest into a state of petrification. Furthermore, with the Worm King as the center, a large amount of lime-colored liquid shot out in all directions in an explosive manner. It covered the sky and covered the earth, making it impossible for anyone to defend against it. No matter which angle one looked from, one would be hit by it. Zheng Zijing's expression was one of anxiety. A liquid was shooting towards him. This liquid was not real liquid, but liquefied petrifying gas. The petrifying gas contained within it was 100 times denser than that of a normal petrifying gas. Not to mention being hit by it, even if one was within 30 feet of it, one would immediately turn into a stone statue. Furthermore, it was said that any living being that was personally petrified by the Worm King had no chance of recovering. In other words, if one was within 30 feet of the Worm King, one would die. At this critical moment, Zheng Zijing's heart was beating wildly, but he did not dare to be slow. He tore off the snow-white necklace from his neck and crushed it on the spot. With a dull thud, the necklace turned into a snow-white powder that filled the air, floating around Zheng Zijing's body. When the liquefied gas met the snow-white powder, it was like water entering flour. It was instantly absorbed, and its momentum was greatly reduced. Zheng Zijing sacrificed this necklace in exchange for a precious opportunity. His figure flashed continuously, and he carefully avoided the liquefied gas, passing through the area. Amidst the angry roars of the Worm King, he successfully passed through the stone forest and reached the shore. It was a sacrificial altar similar to the divine sparrow stage, and it was safe. Zheng Zijing's face was pale, and he was panting heavily. His forehead was covered in sweat. At this moment, his palms began to tremble. Previously, he had been completely tensed up, but now that he had relaxed, his palms began to tremble uncontrollably. Thinking back to the 2 times he had narrowly escaped death, Zheng Zijing could not help but turn pale. However, when he felt that the ground beneath his feet was firm, he couldn't help but laugh out loud. He looked up to the sky and laughed maniacally. Ha ha! I have succeeded! Only a few people had managed to pass this stage in the past. Zheng Zijing was indeed proud. The people at the Divine Sparrow stage, who had personally witnessed this miraculous scene, had mixed feelings. There was shock, fear, dissatisfaction, and dejection. Not bad. You used 20 breaths. Bai Yijian finally let out a smile. Shangguan Qing'er sighed softly. It's a pity about that necklace. That necklace is a soul defense necklace, and it is one of the rarest types of treasures. The value of that necklace is probably not much lower than a semi-manufactured spiritual equipment. Su Yu heard this and nodded to himself. Indeed, from his observations, Zheng Zijing had relied on a soul defense treasure to successfully pass the stage. Since Junior has already passed, it is my turn. Zhou Jin laughed loudly, taking out the black knife on his back for the first time and holding it in his hands. His figure was like the wind, and he took a step forward. With his speed, it was easy for him to reach 1/3 of the stage. Very quickly, the worm of petrification that was twice the size of a normal worm appeared, as expected. But before he could spit out the petrifying energy, the black knife in Zhou Jin's hand flashed, and he instantly sped up, arriving at the center of the stage. The worm of petrification that was 3 times the size of a normal worm did not pass so easily. It opened its mouth and spat out a dense petrifying energy. This time, there was no space left for Zhou Jin. But Zhou Jin was not afraid. The black knife in his hand slashed down from the sky. A blade energy that was hard to see with the naked eye pierced through the clouds. This was clearly a physical attack. But the dense petrifying energy was sliced open, leaving behind a huge gap. Su Yu raised his eyebrows. What a powerful knife technique! It already contains some soul attack. Shangguan Qing'er nodded. This is the soul-severing knife technique of the Yufeng faction. When trained to a certain level, the knife technique will contain some soul attack. It is very troublesome for people of the same cultivation level. Indeed, it was already extremely strenuous for an ordinary person to deal with such a domineering lightning-like blade technique. If a spiritual soul attack that could not be blocked appeared, even if it caused the slightest bit of absent-mindedness and caused an opening to appear, it would be equivalent to drawing the symbol of death. Zhou Jin was like a hot knife through butter, easily reaching the last one-third of the stage. Chapter 541. Moreover, the petrifying worms behind him had also caught up. They spat out large amounts of petrifying gas, sealing off his escape route. Zhou Jin's brows furrowed. He raised his black saber and swung it down. The liquefied petrification gas that attacked him head-on was a fist-sized water droplet, several times larger than the one Jing Zijing had encountered. The saber chi passed through the water droplet, but the water droplet was not affected at all. However, the soul attack contained within it caused the water droplet to crack, and there were faint traces of it cracking. Its speed was also greatly reduced, and a flaw appeared in the light screen that was covered by the liquid. Zhou Jin immediately wielded his saber and flew above the sacrificial altar. At this point, the second person to cross the stone statue forest had appeared. Moreover, apart from the Worm King in the end, they were unstoppable all the way. It was truly a sight to behold. Papa, Bai Yijian could not help but applaud and smile. Good. 15 breaths, only slightly slower than Shangguan Qing'er last year. It was not difficult to see the praise in his words. Many geniuses exclaimed, "Is the wind resistance sect going to be in the limelight this time?" 2 people passed through the stone statue forest. Realizing this, everyone's heart trembled. Indeed, the Yufeng sect's performance at the Divine Sparrow stage this year was exceptionally eye-catching. "Haha, I'll give it a try too." A ghostly voice suddenly came from an inconspicuous corner. It was the black-robed man's Ghost King. The Ghost King took a step forward, and what was very strange was that this step was like teleportation, crossing a third of the area in a single step. Bai Yijian was shocked. To be able to achieve such a terrifying movement technique within the restriction, what a strong physical body. Restrictions could only restrict one's quintessential qi and spiritual energy, slowing down one's movement technique. However, they did not restrict one's physical body. Therefore, those who relied on their powerful physical bodies were not restricted at all. However, a body that could reach such a speed was definitely not an ordinary body. It could only be achieved by someone who was at least at the level of the fairy realm. Everyone could only see his figure flashing continuously. Every time he moved, he would cover a third of the distance. The petrifying worms didn't even have time to react. Only the petrifying Worm King roared, but it was too late to stop the Ghost King. The Ghost King easily crossed over. The entire process only took 10 breaths of time. Such an existence that could easily cross the stone statue forest as though he was walking on flat ground caused the entire Divine Sparrow stage to fall silent. Bai Yijian's eyes were filled with surprise and suspicion. He then smiled and said, "Congratulations, my friend." From the way he addressed the Ghost King, it could be seen how fearful he was of the Ghost King. The Ghost King calmly sat cross-legged on the altar, as if he did not hear anything. "All right, let's go," Shangguan Qing'er said expressionlessly. "Later on, don't make any unnecessary movements. This restrictive spell is very sensitive, and your futile attacks will only agitate the sleeping petrifying worms. If you cause trouble, even I will be affected." She had to carry 2 people at once, and the 3 of them were crossing at the same time. For her, the pressure was not small. Moreover, she still needed to get into the top 5. Of the 3 people who had crossed the river so far, Zheng Zijing had the longest time of 20 breaths. In other words, if she wanted to help Su Yu and the other 2 enter the top 5, she would need to shorten the time needed to do so by at least 20 breaths. This was a great challenge. Unexpectedly, Su Yu casually said, "I appreciate your good intentions, but I have already said that we will think of a way ourselves." Shangguan Qing'er froze, then said, "Are you serious?" She did not believe that Su Yu could still say such words after experiencing the difficulty of the stone statue forest. Before this, she had treated it as Su Yu acting out of spite. But now, she could not help but think about it seriously. Could Su Yu's ancient bloodline really be able to restrain the petrifying energy? All right, since you insist, I will not stop you. I will wait for you there. Shangguan Qing'er thought for a moment and did not insist. She then stepped into the stone statue forest. The gazes of the crowd could not help but follow her. They wanted to see how the female genius of the ancient bloodline, whom the all-creation ancestor had taken a liking to, would cross the stone statue forest. However, Shangguan Qing'er was merely flying casually. She relied on the powerful physical body of the fairy realm to easily cross the stone statue forest. She also crossed the last area, the Worm King's area. Throughout the entire process, the petrifying worms did not have much of a reaction, similar to the Ghost King. However, she was slightly faster than the Ghost King. She had only used 8 breaths time. Bai Yijian nodded his head indifferently. The geniuses of the Divine Sparrow stage were a little regretful that they had not seen the power of her ancient bloodline. As for her taking the first place in 8 breaths time, it did not attract much attention. In their hearts, it was normal for Shangguan Qing'er to take the first place. They were not surprised. Jingyu, let's go. Hold on tight, Su Yu said. Xia Jingyu grabbed Su Yu's belt. She was nervous, not because of the stone statue forest, but because of Su Yu. When her thoughts were gradually revealed, she was no longer as calm and natural as before. She was now much more cautious. Su Yu did not notice it. His figure moved, and he took a step forward. He had just entered the stone statue forest when Su Yu felt the spirit energy in his body being suppressed. It was difficult for him to circulate it. His light body felt as if he was carrying a mountain on his back. However, this was not the end. Xia Jingyu, who was following closely behind, felt a formless ripple sweeping across the stone statue forest. Su Yu suddenly let out a groan, his body falling straight down. If he had felt like he was carrying a mountain just now, he now felt like he was carrying 10 mountains. Shocked, Su Yu revolved his spirit energy to stabilize his body. Xia Jingyu felt the same pressure. Her body was not as strong as Su Yu's, who had the body of a half-god. Under such heavy pressure, she let out a groan, her body falling uncontrollably. Su Yu raised his hand and grabbed her wrist. Only then was he able to pull her up. However, this meant that Su Yu was carrying 20 mountains on his back. Under such heavy pressure, it was just as Bai Yijian had said, it was difficult for him to even move. Bai Yijian stood with his arms crossed, coldly saying, "Young man, ignore my warning. If you die here, don't blame me for not warning you." Many of the geniuses of the Divine Sparrow stage were shaking their heads. Even fairies might not be able to bring someone safely over safely. This person is just a human king, but his guts are exceptional. Perhaps he is being arrogant? After all, he was invited by an all-creation old monster. Most likely, there is something special about him. However, it looks like the situation is not good. He only has himself to blame for his death. It is a pity that the lady he brought along will die here. Hearing the discussions around her, Xia Jingyu creased her brows, gently saying to the figure in front of her, "Brother Yu, don't worry about me. You should go first." Su Yu's figure swayed, muttering to himself, "Is this all you've got? That's good. It should be easier than I expected." His voice was not loud, but he was not far from the Divine Sparrow stage, and his words were clearly heard by the geniuses. They could not help but freeze on the spot. Was this kid too arrogant, or had he lost his rationality? Su Yu grabbed Xia Jingyu's wrist, floating in the air. His speed was extremely slow, almost as if he was walking step by step. Compared to the people who had crossed before, who could easily teleport hundreds of feet, he was like a snail. However, this was Su Yu's limit. Carrying 20 mountains on his back, any other half-god would not look any better than Su Yu. Oh, he can still walk. I have underestimated him. Bai Yijian's cold face was filled with surprise. However, at this speed, I'm afraid he will die faster than anyone in the past. After which, Bai Yijian shook his head, looking at the remaining people, looking for those who had the potential to cross the stone statue forest. At this moment, Su Yu had already traveled 1,000 feet. With such a slow speed, the petrifying worms had already noticed him, and they were rushing over. 10 thumb-sized petrifying worms surrounded the slow-moving humans from all directions, spitting out a large amount of petrifying energy. Seeing this scene, many people shook their heads, too lazy to watch what would happen next. What a freak! Some people, who couldn't understand Su Yu, couldn't understand why he was courting his own death. Ah! Quick, look! However, at this moment, someone let out a sharp cry, as if he had seen a ghost. Many of the geniuses could not help but crease their brows. Could it be that those two fellows had gotten lucky and escaped? When they turned to look, it was as if they had been struck by lightning. They froze on the spot, their eyes wide open. Their pupils were filled with shock. Bai Yijian heard the voice and looked over. His pupils suddenly shrank, and his cold face was replaced by a look of surprise. This is Su Yu, who was surrounded by petrifying energy, casually waved his hand, and a jaw-dropping scene unfolded. The petrifying energy, which was approaching them, had disappeared into thin air. It was as if a scorching flame had burned the petrifying energy into nothingness. In the eyes of the half-fairy, this was the case. However, in Bai Yijian's eyes, there was a shapeless flame. As Su Yu waved his hand, the flame exploded, burning the petrifying energy that was near him. The flame even spread along the petrifying energy, burning the 10 petrifying worms that were surrounding him. The 10 worms struggled in pain for a while, before losing their lives. The petrifying worms had been killed. Su Yu had destroyed the petrifying energy with a wave of his hand, as well as the petrifying worms. Su Yu's gaze was calm. He held Xia Jingyu's hand, as if he was taking a stroll in the park. He was neither fast nor slow as he headed straight for the sacrificial altar on the opposite shore. After walking for 1,000 feet, a large number of petrifying worms attacked them. There were more than 100 of them, and they were densely packed. It was as if a black river had covered the earth. This is the reaction of the seal. If the two of them were to travel together, they would definitely attract 10 times the number of petrifying worms. In a breath's time, Su Yu and Xia Jingyu were surrounded by the black tide in the center of a 30-foot radius. The ferocious petrifying worms all spat out a large amount of petrifying energy. The energy was as thick as a dark cloud. With such a dense amount of petrifying energy, even the few people who had successfully passed it could not help but feel fearful. Zheng Zhijing's expression was fearful. With so many petrifying worms attacking him, even his soul defense necklace might not be able to completely defend against them. Zhou Jin's gaze turned serious, locking onto the figure within the fog. Shangguan Qing'er was prepared to rush back to save them. The Ghost King had a thoughtful expression, but no one knew what he was thinking. As for the Divine Sparrow stage, it was silent. Chapter 542. Creak. With a dull thud, the crowd could only see the figure in the fog wave his hand. At that moment, the petrifying energy that filled the sky disappeared. The hundreds of petrifying worms that had surrounded him twitched at the same time, then fell silent. All of them had been killed. Another move, and all of the petrifying worms had been killed. Hiss. How did he do that? Gasps could be heard from the Divine Sparrow stage. Looking at Su Yu, who was like a god of death, killing all of the petrifying worms, the crowd felt their hearts tremble. For the rest of the journey, more petrifying worms rushed over. However, they were all turned to dust with the flick of a finger. There were no exceptions. By the time he reached the center, the number of petrifying worms he had killed was uncountable. There were at least 1,000 of them, including the petrifying worm that was twice the size of a normal worm. The geniuses on the Divine Sparrow stage were speechless, staring at Su Yu's back. The others had used all of their abilities to avoid the petrifying worms, barely escaping the stone statue forest. Who would not be fearful? Only Su Yu was killing, using the worm corpses to pave a path. The crowd was shocked, speechless. Su Yu was, without a doubt, the strongest person in history to have crossed the stone statue. On the sacrificial altar, the 4 people who had successfully crossed the stone statue were also stunned. Jing Zijing's expression was one of shock and indignation. How is this possible? This lad is just a good-for-nothing who hides behind a woman's back. Where did he get his abilities from? Does he have some sort of treasure on him? Hearing this, Zhou Jin's eyes glowed. Shang Guanqinger opened her beautiful eyes wide, looking at Su Yu's exaggerated method of crossing the stone statue in shock. She could not understand what technique Su Yu had used. Like Bai Yijian, she could only sense a faintly discernible formless flame. Other than that, there was nothing special about it. At this point, she finally understood why Su Yu had the confidence to bring people across the stone statue. Stepping into the center of the stone statue, Su Yu killed the worm that was 3 times its size with the flick of a finger. He then looked around, his eyes burning with a formless flame. This was the formless flame that he had obtained from the white-eyed fire glass frog in the first ground of legacy. It could burn souls. Although most of the flames were suppressed by the divine 9-dragon cauldron, a small portion of them was enough to crush these creatures. However, in order not to be seen through, Su Yu pretended to raise his hand to mislead the onlookers. Stepping on the corpses on the ground, Su Yu calmly said, "If you don't want to die, scram. Those who come, kill without mercy." With a light shout, these intelligent stone flower insects immediately hesitated and stopped their attack. They had already sensed that this man had a terrifying power that specialized in restraining them. No matter how many of them went, they would all be courting death. A scene that made the genius's jaws drop occurred. A large number of petrifying worms retreated like the tide. Wherever Su Yu passed, the petrifying worms automatically made way for him. Not a single petrifying worm dared to approach him, as if he was their king. Just like that, Su Yu held Xia Jingyu's hand as if he was taking a stroll. They entered an uninhabited area, all the way to the last section, where the petrifying worm king was. The petrifying worm king stood up. It was a head taller than Su Yu, and it stared at him coldly. Su Yu met its gaze, flames burning in his eyes. He calmly said, "Get out of the way." The petrifying worm king let out a ferocious hiss, ready to attack. But after looking at each other for a moment, it gradually lowered its body and crawled to the side. The crowd was already numb from the shock. Even the petrifying worm king chose to retreat. What kind of monster had appeared in the stone statue forest this time around? But what made them even more confused was that Su Yu's gaze turned cold. "Stand there. Who allowed you to leave?" Hearing this, the petrifying worm king turned its head in embarrassment and anger, letting out a fierce hiss. As a king, retreating with its tail between its legs had already caused it to lose face. How could it not be embarrassed by Su Yu's rebuke? Hand over the spiritual liquid of the female worm. Su Yu extended his hand and said firmly, "You only have 3 breaths' time to consider." The petrifying worm king was furious. The spiritual liquid of the female worm was used to nurture its offspring. If a normal petrifying worm wanted to grow 2 or 3 times its original size, it had to be baptized by the spiritual liquid of the female worm for a long period of time. How could it give it to an outsider? 1. Su Yu was merciless, calmly saying the word 1. The petrifying worm king spat out threads of liquid petrifying energy from its mouth. Its body gradually arched, looking like it was ready to fight. 2. Su Yu's eyes were filled with flames, letting out shreds of killing intent. The petrifying worm king was not to be outdone, its entire body glowing with ferocity. 3. Su Yu's killing intent appeared. But at this moment, The petrifying Worm King's arched body quickly bent down. It spat out a colorful liquid from its mouth, and hurriedly crawled away. Suyu grabbed with his hand, letting out a cold grunt. He took out a ball the size of a thumb, casually smearing it on a stone statue that had been petrified for an unknown period of time. At that moment, the petrified area revealed a fresh, meaty texture. But because he did not continue smearing it, it was once again petrified by the remaining petrifying energy in the air. It was indeed this item. Suyu's heart shook as he kept it. Then, he easily brought Xia Jingyu to the sacrificial altar. At this moment, everyone looked at Suyu as if they were looking at a monster. Not only did he kill the petrifying worms, he had even subdued the Worm King. Finally, he had even forced the Worm King to hand over the spiritual liquid of the female worm. Such a domineering attitude was even more chilling than the Worm King's. Bai Yijian came back to his senses, his figure flickering as he appeared in front of Suyu. He clapped his hands and laughed. "Friend, you are so young, yet you possess such a powerful technique. My eyes are blind, and I did not notice it. My apologies." The seal did not affect Bai Yijian and his clan members, so they had directly crossed over to him. Suyu smiled. "I was just lucky. I might not be as lucky next time." His words caused everyone's mouths to twitch. There would be a next time? You have almost killed all the petrifying worms. Bai Yijian wore a warm smile, satisfied with Suyu's performance. But with a quick glance, Bai Yijian realized that there were 6 people present. Suyu and Xia Jingyu, Zheng Zijing and Zhou Jin, as well as Shangguan Qing'er and the Ghost King. The mysterious heavenly spirit pond can only hold 5 people. "You have one more person," Bai Yijian said expressionlessly. His gaze drifted towards Shangguan Qing'er. "Miss Qing'er, the spiritual pond is of little use to us fairies. Why don't you give it to the younger generation?" Shangguan Qing'er smiled. "Indeed, it is of no use to me, but I do not need to give it to others." Bai Yijian was in a difficult position. He looked around and did not care. "If that is the case, the 5 of you should discuss it." In other words, one of them was going to be eliminated. "Humph. Of course, it will be this woman who will be eliminated. She is the extra person." Zheng Zijing gave a light hum, pointing at Xia Jingyu. "All of us relied on our own abilities, and only she was brought here by someone else. What right does she have to take the spot?" Although he lusted after Xia Jingyu's beauty, the opportunity was right in front of him. How could he allow others to take it away from him? Suyu nodded. "Yes, there are indeed too many people." As soon as he finished speaking, his figure blurred and disappeared. Zheng Zijing's expression changed, and he let out a cold grunt. "You want to fight me? You do not have the right." In his eyes, Suyu had only been able to cross the stone statue forest so arrogantly because he possessed some sort of mysterious semi-manufactured spiritual artifact. In terms of cultivation level, he was much higher than Suyu, and he had an absolute advantage. "Twice in a row, you only know how to hide behind a woman, and you still dare to challenge me. Fine, I'll teach you a lesson." Zheng Zijing took out a long ruler that was emitting flames. It was a powerful high-grade divine artifact. With his eyesight, he could easily see Su Yu's path. With a low grunt, he aimed at Su Yu's next path and struck out with the spiritual ruler. It released a terrifying flame that enveloped Su Yu. But before he could rejoice, a crack appeared in the flame. A small golden sword sliced through the raging flames, piercing toward him. Zheng Zijing instinctively used the spiritual ruler to block it. However, the moment they collided, his hand felt lighter. The spiritual ruler had been sliced into 2. A high-grade divine artifact had been destroyed, just like that. Following which, the golden sword pierced through Zheng Zijing's shoulder without any resistance, causing his body to fall from the altar into the stone statue forest. The tables had turned too quickly. Zhou Jin only had time to let out a furious roar, extending his hand to grab Zheng Zijing. However, a huge shadow of an insect flashed by leisurely. Jing Zijing's falling posture turned into a stone statue. The Worm King had turned him into stone. Even with the spiritual liquid of the female worm, he could not recover. Jing Zijing had died just like that. He had made it through the stone statue forest with much difficulty, but he had been knocked off the altar by Su Yu, dying in the stone statue forest. Whoosh! Su Yu grabbed with his palm, retrieving the small golden sword, calmly saying, "This number is just enough." Semi-manufactured spiritual artifact? Everyone present was knowledgeable, and their pupils shrank slightly. "Lad, did the Yufeng faction offend you? How dare you attack us so viciously?" Zhou Jin's cold and furious voice came from behind Su Yu. Su Yu turned around, his expression calm. "He thought there were too many people, so I gave him what he wanted. If you think there are too many people, I can give you what you want." Hearing this, Zhou Jin was furious. "Do you really think that you can look down on me just because you have Shangguan Qing'er backing you?" Su Yu assumed a fighting stance. "You think too much. A coward like you is not worthy of my attention. This has nothing to do with Shangguan Qing'er. Lad, this is the second time you have humiliated me. Since that is the case, do not blame me for being harsh." Zhou Jin was furious, his eyes glowing fiercely. But at this moment Bai Yijian calmly said, "Why? Are you looking down on me? You have guts to attack me without my permission in my territory." Zhou Jin's expression froze. He slowly retracted his hand, suppressing his anger as he said, "I have been rude. Please forgive me, elder." As he spoke, he glared at Su Yu, his eyes filled with murderous intent. Su Yu shrugged his shoulders, nonchalantly withdrawing his attacking stance. Bai Yijian nodded indifferently. He did not feel any pity for Jing Zijing's death. "All right, since we have enough people, let's head to the spiritual pool immediately. You only have half a day's time. After that, the effects of the spiritual pool will automatically disappear. As for what you get, it will depend on your luck." Chapter 543. Under his lead, the five of them followed the stairs and entered the depths of the earth. After about an hour, they finally stopped after descending to an unknown depth. This was not the end of the stairs. Instead, it was a giant cavern that had been artificially created in the middle. The stairs continued to extend deeper underground. At the deepest part of the stairs was the last legacy, the land of legacy of materials. From this, it could be seen that this place was much more heavily guarded than the other legacies. The cavern that they were in was located in the middle of the stairs. It was the stronghold of the protectors. If anyone descended the stairs, they would definitely be pursued by the protectors. It would be extremely difficult to sneak into the land of legacy of materials without anyone knowing. The group entered the cavern. There were many caverns of various sizes that were provided for the protectors to live in. What was strange was that the cavern was dead silent. There was not a single protector in sight. Filled with suspicion, the group arrived at the deepest part of the cavern, in front of a giant light screen. 4 demonic beasts of different colors were flashing on the light screen. Their faces were abnormally ferocious, giving off a frightening feeling. The mountain-tumbling formation of the 4 divisions? Shangguan Qing'er's eyes flickered, and she was slightly shocked. This kind of formation is an ancient formation that has been lost. Apart from using the blood essence of the person who set it up, only an almighty divine master can break it. Almighty divine masters? Su Yu was secretly shocked. This formation was not just ordinarily strong. Bai Yijian nodded. "Of course. This is the sacred land of our clan. Naturally, it is well guarded." After saying this, Bai Yijian took out a drop of his blood and sprinkled it on the light screen. With a sizzling sound, the light screen gradually dissolved, revealing a passage that only allowed one person to pass through. "Go in. Remember, you only have half a day's time." Su Yu's face was filled with anticipation as he entered with Xia Jingyu. The rest of the group entered one after another. After letting them in, Bai Yijian left the place and returned to the sacrificial altar. Whoosh! The young man who had been following behind him flew over. Father, why are you letting outsiders use our sacred land? I do not understand. This half-fairy, who had completed his vital energy crystals, was Bai Yijian's son. Bai Yijian asked, why not? Our people have already left the 5 peaks, and the spiritual pool has been abandoned. It is not a big deal to let these useless people use it. However, the young man was unwilling. That's letting them off too easily. What if they obtain a great fortuitous encounter and obtain a huge breakthrough? Among them, the disciples of the Yufeng faction have a cultivation base of vital energy crystals. If they manage to break through to the fairy realm, wouldn't it be too easy for them? Ha ha! Bai Yijian laughed. Sure, don't be impatient. The mysterious heavenly spiritual pond has been used by us for hundreds of years, and its effects are getting worse by the day. Even now, it is only left with a thin amount of energy. At the very most, it can only form a spiritual energy crystal. It does not even have the effect of turning the spiritual energy crystal into a vital energy crystal. So, how can it help Zhou Jin break through to the fairy realm? Furthermore, it's not the water that's working in the spirit pool, but the spirit stones in the water. The energy emitted by the spirit stones fuses with the water, and that's why the spirit pool exists. As for those spirit stones, we've examined every one of them. More than 90% of them have lost their energy, and the remaining 10% have been invaded by impurities, causing their energy to become impure. They've become useless spirit stones. There is only so much energy left in the spirit pool, and it will be used up in half a day. They will not gain much from it, Bai Yijian said mysteriously. This was the reason why he had opened the mysterious heavenly spiritual pond. Hearing this, Baizha calmed down a little. Let them take advantage of it first. If they can increase their abilities a little, it will be beneficial for us to break through the seal that Tianjizi personally set up. Once it's done, I'll kill them all. That Shangguan Qing'er can forget about escaping as well. Bai Yijian's lips curled into a cold smile. The rest of them can be killed, but that Shangguan Qing'er is still a virgin. She has plenty of vital yin, and if you can collect her vital yin, it will be very beneficial for you to break through to the fairy realm. Her? Baizha's mind flashed with that pretty face, and he could not help but be tempted. Thank you, Father. All right, continue to host it. See if there are any suitable people among the remaining batch of people. As long as we open the last place of legacy, our bloodline will be freed from the fate of being sealed for hundreds of years. Bai Yijian's eyes were filled with excitement. Deep underground, Su Yu passed through the spell, and what he saw was a narrow cave. In the middle of the cave there was a pool of jade-green water. It was only about 10 square meters, and it was rather narrow. Could only fit 5 people at most. However, the jade-green pool was emitting a shockingly warm energy. It filled the air, and it was like a fine wine that had been brewing for a long time. Its fragrance filled the air, and it was extremely intoxicating. Whoosh! The sound of something breaking through the air could be heard. Zhou Jin was the first to choose a spot and enter the spiritual pool. At that moment, the jade-green energy in the pool, visible to the naked eye, entered his body through his pores. It nourished the 3 crystals in his dantian, causing them to become even more exquisite. It was a sign that they were being purified. Su Yu and Xia Jingyu chose spots that were adjacent to each other, and they entered the pool right next to each other. A cooling sensation assaulted him abruptly. The gentle energy was like a fish swimming through Su Yu's pores at lightning speed. When the energy entered his dantian, it quickly formed the outline of the 3rd spirit energy crystal. He was about to break through to the level of half-god. Such nature-defying effects made Su Yu secretly happy. The effects of this spiritual pool were nature-defying. In the Zhenlong continent, this was something unimaginable. The jade-green energy entered Su Yu's body unceasingly, beginning to fill the spirit energy crystal. Once it was completely formed, he would truly reach the level of half-god. With 2 splashes, Shangguan Qing'er and the Ghost King also entered the water. The Ghost King could understand. Although his physical body was at the level of a Ghost King, his cultivation level was still at the level of half-god. He had not even broken through to the level of half-fairy. However, Shangguan Qing'er was a fairy realm. The energy in this place was not enough for her to use. Hee, Brother Black Snow, let me help you massage your shoulders. Shangguan Qing'er laughed delicately, approaching Su Yu with a smile. Her 2 small hands massaged Su Yu's shoulders. Brother Black Snow, you have worked hard. It was obvious that she was trying to curry favor with him. Su Yu was at a crucial point in his cultivation. How could he have the leisure to care about her? On the other hand, Xia Jingyu, who was at the side, did not immediately start to cultivate like Su Yu. Instead, she kept an eye on Shangguan Qing'er. Seeing that this woman was not behaving herself, Xia Jingyu pulled Su Yu to her side, away from Shangguan Qing'er. She calmly said, Miss Shangguan, please conduct yourself with dignity. Please do not disturb Brother Yu, if you truly have good intentions for him. Shangguan Qing'er was trying to curry favor with Su Yu. She was displeased to be disturbed. You don't know what's good for you. If not for Brother Black Snow, do you think I would be courteous to you? Shangguan Qing'er did not hide her threatening tone. With her strength, she could kill Xia Jingyu with just a lift of her palm, and it would be as easy as blowing off dust. Xia Jingyu was not afraid. I might not be afraid of you. Humph. With a grunt, Shangguan Qing'er did not dare to do anything to Xia Jingyu. She would anger Su Yu even more. After she finished speaking, Shangguan Qing'er started to play in the pool, minding her own business. She swam from one end to the other and back to the other end, looking extremely bored. She did not train at all, nor did she absorb the energy in this place. Zhou Jin was furious. He thought about how his junior, Zheng Zhijing, had died tragically in the stone statue forest for a spot. In the end, Shangguan Qing'er had used it to play. At that moment, Zhou Jin felt that his junior's death was not worth it. There are so many spiritual stones at the bottom of the pool. Shangguan Qing'er felt bored and took out a stone from the bottom of the pool. It was a grayish-white spiritual stone, only the size of an eyeball. With her perception, she had already discovered it when she entered the spiritual pool. She was just pretending to be surprised. As soon as she spoke, Zhou Jin and the Ghost King immediately stopped cultivating and looked at the spiritual stone in her hand. From the grayish-white spiritual stone, it was not difficult to sense that there was a trace of energy left. It was the jade-green energy in the pool. Could the energy in the pool come from the stones at the bottom of the pool? The 2 of them immediately grabbed a large number of stones from the bottom of the pool. Unfortunately, they were all grayish-white in color, and the energy within them had already dissipated. As for the Ghost King, one of the spiritual stones he grabbed was jade-green in color, and the energy it contained was extraordinary. However, the Ghost King's eyes immediately darkened. The jade-green spiritual stone was mixed with black, causing the green color to darken. It's a pity that there are impurities mixed in, and the energy within cannot be used. The Ghost King casually threw it away and sighed regretfully. If one were to absorb the impurities rashly, the impurities would damage the meridians, and the dantian would be damaged, and the crystals would shatter. The impurities were equivalent to poison. Although the energy contained in the spiritual stone was pure, it could only be seen and not used. The 2 of them did not give up and continued to grab. Xia Jingyu was also tempted, and she grabbed a few. Unfortunately, the spiritual stones they grabbed were either grayish-white spiritual stones that had exhausted their energy, or spirit stones that were mixed with various impurities. A mischievous smile flashed past Shangguan Qing'er's face. She had achieved her goal of teasing them. Do you still not understand? This spiritual pool is most likely an abandoned spiritual pool. That's why that fellow is willing to let us use it. Hearing this, the Ghost King was silent for a moment. He sighed and stopped fishing, and obediently absorbed the little energy. Zhou Jin was unwilling to give up, and he continued to try a few more times. However, there were indeed more than 90% grayish-white spiritual stones, and there were many impurities in the spiritual stones. They could not be used at all. This fellow is indeed not kind. Zhou Jin cursed in a low voice. Suddenly, he acutely sensed that the jade-green energy in the pool was undergoing a great change. The Ghost King's abdomen seemed to have a vortex, and it was absorbing a large amount of the energy in the pool like a whale. 1% of the energy in the pool was quickly absorbed. You! Zhou Jin was furious. There was only so much energy in the pool. If the Ghost King absorbed a little more, he would lose a little more. All right. Let's see who is faster. Zhou Jin let out a low grunt. The 3 vital energy crystals in his body were all released, and they absorbed the energy crazily. The Ghost King frowned, and he increased his absorption speed. As the 2 of them absorbed the energy crazily, the energy underwent a great change. Even Su Yu, who was in the midst of training, was shocked awake. He and Xia Jingyu did not have the ability to absorb energy like that. Chapter 544. At that time, it would be difficult to break through to become a half-god, let alone become a half-fairy. Zhou Jin glanced at Su Yu and chuckled. So what if you get the quota? Opportunities are always prepared for the strong. Su Yu's face darkened, but he suddenly noticed the impure spiritual stone in Xia Jingyu's hand. Although he had been cultivating, he was still aware of what was happening in the outside world. Jingyu, do me a favor. Su Yu pondered for a moment, then his eyes flashed. Xia Jingyu nodded without hesitation. Use your water-type magical power to help me collect all the impure spiritual stones. Just like that? Xia Jingyu was confused, but she did as Su Yu asked without hesitation. She weaved signs with her hands, and the water in the spiritual pool began to ripple. There was a turbulent undercurrent at the bottom of the pool. Under the impact of the current, the spiritual stones in the pool were stirred up. Whenever a green spiritual stone appeared, Xia Jingyu would raise her hand and use the current to grab it under her feet. She was extremely efficient, and in less than half an hour, she had already grabbed more than 20 impure spiritual stones. The Ghost King and Zhou Jin were initially wary, but after confirming that they were all impure spiritual stones, they no longer paid attention. As for Shangguan Qing'er, she squinted her eyes and looked at Xia Jingyu. Interesting. If I'm not wrong, within the time it takes for half an incense stick to burn, you have displayed 9 different water-based techniques. I couldn't tell that you have such a high level of comprehension. Most people can cultivate 3 techniques at the same time, and it's already quite good. You're an anomaly. Xia Jingyu did not reply, but focused on collecting the green spiritual stones. Finally, after an hour, all the impure spiritual stones in the spiritual pool had been collected by Xia Jingyu. There were more than 80 of them, all lying quietly under her feet. Xia Jingyu wiped the sweat from her forehead, her face flushed. Brother Yu, it's done. Su Yu smiled gratefully, then reached out with his right hand to grab one of the spiritual stones. Without anyone noticing, a picture of a vast galaxy gradually appeared on his palm. It was the Emperor-based Saint artifact, the Milky Way star sand. According to Tianjizi's message, this item only had one function, and that was to purify. Now, he finally had a chance to try purifying the impure spiritual stones. When the pattern came into contact with the spiritual stone, Su Yu felt his palm heat up. It was as if something warm had flowed out of his palm and entered the spiritual stone. Then, the warm current returned. Opening his palm, he saw that it was a dark green spirit stone. It was sparkling and translucent like a pure emerald. Not only did it not have any impurities, it didn't even have a single flaw. Even the green energy was twice as pure as before. It would not be an exaggeration to say that this spirit stone was even purer than an intact spirit stone. It was purified, Moreover, it was an extremely deep level of purification. Even the energy itself was purified. Suyu was overjoyed. Was this the power of an emperor-based saint artifact? It could ignore the rules of the world and go against it. Even an all-creation's old monster might not be able to purify a spirit stone that contained impurities. Even if he could do it, he would need to spend a lot of time and pay a huge price. However, for an emperor-based saint weapon, it would only take a blink of an eye. Its miraculous effects caused Suyu to be shocked speechless. This treasure was indeed extraordinary. After a long while, Suyu finally calmed down. He extended his palm toward Xia Jingyu. "Jingyu, give me your hand." Xia Jingyu knew that Suyu was preparing to cultivate, so she extended her fair and tender hand without hesitation, allowing Suyu to hold it. Her face turned slightly red. Although she had held hands with Suyu many times, it made her heart beat faster every time. At that moment, she suddenly felt a warm current pass from Suyu's palm into her body. This energy was even purer than the energy in the pool, and it was even more majestic. The outline of the third spirit energy crystal in her body instantly took shape, and it was already 1/10 complete. This is? Xia Jingyu glanced at the spirit stone in Suyu's right hand. It was quickly turning gray, and she was secretly shocked. Could Suyu forcefully absorb the impurities? After absorbing the first spirit stone, Suyu's heart shook. He stored the wasted spirit stone into his space ring to prevent it from being discovered. Picking up the second spirit stone, Suyu secretly purified it, continuously absorbing the terrifyingly pure energy within the spirit stone. Suyu kept half of it for himself, while he transferred the other half into Xia Jingyu's body. The two of them started to condense the third spirit energy crystal at the same time. Everything was carried out in secret. 2 hours later, out of the 80 spirit stones, they had used up 20 of them. A vortex appeared on top of their heads at the same time, and the surrounding spirit energy was crazily channeled into their bodies. Shangguan Qing'er, who was playing around, looked at Suyu and Xia Jingyu in surprise. Breaking through to half-god at the same time? The Ghost King and Zhou Jin also opened their eyes simultaneously, looking at the two of them in surprise. A third of the energy in the pool had been divided between the two of them, so where did Suyu and Xia Jingyu get the energy to break through? Could it be that they were already infinitely close to half-god cultivation, and thus broke through by absorbing a little of the energy? Thinking about it, this was the only possibility. However, 2 hours later, buzz, buzz, buzz. 2 vortexes suddenly appeared above the spirit pool, and a boundless amount of spirit energy gathered. It was like a liquid, extremely dense. This is the sign of breaking through to half-god? Shangguan Qing'er and Zhou Jin first looked at the Ghost King. His cultivation was at the peak of half-god, and he was about to condense the vital energy crystal. However, the Ghost King was equally shocked. The three of them looked at Suyu and Xia Jingyu at the same time. The spirit energy in their bodies was surging, and they had reached the limits of their bodies. If the spirit energy continued to surge, their bodies would definitely collapse. It's them. How is this possible? The Ghost King was the most shocked. He was also a half-god, and he was a top-notch half-god. No matter what, he was much closer to the fairy realm than Suyu and Zhou Jin, who had just become half-gods. Moreover, he had absorbed close to half of the energy in the spirit pool, while Suyu and Xia Jingyu had not absorbed much. However, the strange thing was that they had just broken through to half-god, and now they had broken through to half-god in one go, while the Ghost King, who had absorbed so much energy, was still stuck at the half-god realm. With such a strange and distinct contrast, even if they did not understand what was going on, they should have understood that something was wrong. Shangguan Qing'er looked at Suyu suspiciously, her eyes darting back and forth. Finally, she noticed that there were only 2 or 3 impure spiritual stones left under Suyu's feet. Could it be that you can absorb the impure energy? Shangguan Qing'er's mind was racing, and she cried out in surprise. Even she did not dare to absorb the impure energy, but Su Yu could use it as training energy, ignoring the toxic impurities. Zhou Jin and the Ghost King were both shocked. Could he even absorb this kind of energy? The Ghost King's eyes shone brightly, while Zhou Jin's eyes were filled with greed. Su Yu had a precious treasure on him. What kind of nature-defying treasure was it to be able to turn the impure energy into his own? Am I being suspected? Su Yu saw the three of them looking at him, and he was secretly on his guard. Shangguan Qing'er's eyes, which were staring at Su Yu, became deeper and deeper, as if she was trying to see through him. Su Yu's heart trembled slightly. One was a fairy, one had a fairy body, and the last one had a top vital energy crystal. Su Yu had some confidence in dealing with one of them, but if the three of them attacked him together, the outcome would be difficult to predict. Brother Black Snow, you. Shangguan Qing'er slowly approached him. Su Yu's expression turned serious, and the three small golden swords in his sleeves were ready to be thrown out at any time. However, at that moment, Shangguan Qing'er's small face suddenly revealed a look of surprise. Haha, Brother Black Snow really has the bloodline of the ancient times. To be able to absorb the impure energy, it's unbelievable. No wonder my master insisted that I bring you back. Hearing this, Zhou Jin and the Ghost King were stunned. Bloodline of the ancient times? Could it be that Su Yu really had the bloodline of the ancient times? If that was the case, it might really make sense. According to the ancient books, the bloodline of the ancient times had the nature-defying ability to ignore the rules of the universe. To be able to absorb the impure energy, it might be a type of bloodline of the ancient times. At that moment, Zhou Jin gave up on the idea of attacking. If he really had the bloodline of the ancient times, there would be no benefit in killing Su Yu. Instead, he would have a conflict with Shangguan Qing'er. With her around, it would be difficult for him to kill Su Yu. The Ghost King thought for a moment, then looked away expressionlessly. Su Yu's eyeballs moved slightly, neither denying nor admitting it. He silently continued to complete the most crucial breakthrough. When Shangguan Qing'er saw his actions, she was even more certain of what he was thinking. Su Yu had the bloodline of the ancient times that could absorb impure energy. At that moment, Su Yu was at the most crucial moment. The three spiritual energy crystals in his body were full and could no longer contain the excess spiritual energy in his body. In fact, because of the excessive spiritual energy, cracks had appeared on the surface of the spiritual energy crystals. This was a warning sign that the spiritual energy had reached its limit. At the same time, the spiritual energy from the outside world continued to surge into his body. His body was like a balloon that was about to explode. If he did not channel the spiritual energy, he might really explode and die. At that moment, one of the three spiritual energy crystals in his dantian started to change under the immense spiritual pressure. Under the immense pressure, the spiritual energy crystal shrunk. Inside the crystal, a crystal that was different from the spiritual energy crystals started to change. What was contained within the crystal was the vital energy that only strong martial artists of the half-fairy and fairy realm possessed. The spiritual energy crystal started to change into a vital energy crystal. As the spiritual energy above his head became stronger, the spiritual pressure in his dantian became stronger. The crystal was continuously compressed. Inside the crystal, more and more vital energy crystals appeared. The process seemed slow, but it happened very quickly. After a cup of tea's time, Su Yu's vital energy crystal was already 90% transformed into a vital energy crystal. As the last lump of spiritual energy above his head poured into Su Yu's body, the last 10% of the spiritual energy crystal had completely transformed into a vital energy crystal. At that moment, Su Yu had finally stepped into the half-fairy level and possessed a vital energy crystal. This meant that he could now use his vital energy. Su Yu had already experienced the difference between the spiritual energy and vital energy of the same magical treasure. With this vital energy crystal, Suyu estimated that his battle power could increase by 30%. At the same time, Xia Jingyu had also completed the transformation of the vital energy crystal. It was a breathtakingly beautiful face with a rosy glow, emitting a divine light. She was already beautiful, but now she looked even more noble and beautiful. "Thank you, Brother Yu." Xia Jingyu's beautiful eyes were filled with joy and gratitude. Suyu laughed. "I owe you a lot. This little bit of compensation is nothing." Zhou Jin and the Ghost King had complicated looks in their eyes. The two of them had risked their lives to fight for the energy in the spiritual pool, but Suyu had easily obtained 10 times more energy than them, easily breaking through to the half-fairy level. Such a comparison could not help but be dejected. Bai Yijian had predicted that they would need half a day to use up all the energy in the pool. But now only 4 hours had passed. Seeing that there was still some time left, Suyu slowly closed his eyes and began to consolidate the cultivation that he had just achieved. Secretly, his soul entered the 9 jade spiritual pearl, bringing with it the spiritual liquid of the female worm. Wu Aoyue was sitting on the ground under the shade of a tree. She was bent over and very seriously weaving the thunder armor. The weaving process of the armor was quite complicated. First, the thunder herb had to be peeled off and its thin stem was extracted. Then, it was continuously refined with spiritual energy, squeezing out all the impurities and water in the stem. Only then would it be possible to obtain a useful silk thread. There were thousands of such thin stems in a single thunder herb. Extracting all of them required a lot of time and energy. At that moment, she had successfully extracted a thunder herb and obtained a ball of silk thread. Sensing movement, Wu Aoyue raised her head subconsciously. Her forehead was dripping with sweat, reflecting a 5-colored light in the air. "Master!" Wu Aoyue hurriedly put down the item in her hands and stood up to greet him. Suyu gestured with his palm. "No need to be so polite. Continue with your work." After saying this, he casually threw over the extra purified spiritual stones. "You have done well. Take these and use them." Wu Aoyue subconsciously caught them. When she looked at them, she could not help but be shocked. "What is this? What pure energy! It is even purer than crystals." Wu Aoyue tried to absorb some of the energy. Her dantian suddenly felt like it was expanding. This was a sign that she was about to break through to half-fairy. A look of shock appeared on his face. What a powerful energy! After recovering from her shock, Wu Aoyue bowed. "Thank you, Master." First, she had the incredible feather spiritual pomegranate. Now she had this kind of spiritual stone. Breaking through to half-fairy was just around the corner. Suyu waved his hands without turning his head and entered the house. Looking at his back, Wu Aoyue's resentment lessened. In all fairness, if she had not been enslaved, Suyu's character would have been worthy of admiration. Her lips trembled slightly. Wu Aoyue could no longer understand her own emotions. She did not know whether she should be excited about her continuous gains or continue to hate Suyu. Suyu, who was completely unaware of this, entered the house and pulled open a cabinet. Xing Ji's stone statue was standing quietly inside. "Hee, you are quite lucky. You got the spiritual liquid faster than I expected." Suyu took out a ball of the female worm's spiritual liquid and smeared it on her face. Cracks appeared on Xing Ji's face, and layers of stone skin fell off, revealing the delicate skin underneath. "Ah, pooey pooey." Once the spiritual liquid was removed, Xing Gu gasped for breath, occasionally spitting out the stone residue in her mouth. She looked haggard and dispirited. She did not have the elegance of a heavenly ghost. She was in a sorry state. Suyu did not have much time. As he smeared the liquid on the rest of her body, he said, "Quickly recover from your injuries. The fierce battle will begin soon. Although it is just a premonition, I can feel that the descendants of the guards are plotting something big." Xinggu bit her lips, as if she would bite Suyu at any moment. She replied reluctantly, "Do I have a choice? Su Yu glanced at her, calmly saying, "It is good that you understand. You had better not disappoint me. Alright, take my words to heart." After saying this, he left the thatched cottage. As he passed by the nursery, he took a look. The heavenly orchid silver bamboo still did not show any signs of germination. Su Yu could not help but wonder if the two seeds had really died. Shaking his head, Su Yu's soul returned to his body. When he opened his eyes, he was shocked to find that the 4 divisions mountain tumbling formation had already been activated. It had not been opened by Baijian. Instead, it had been destroyed by some kind of extremely frightening energy. It had torn open a giant hole and destroyed it. The 4 divisions mountain tumbling formation was a powerful formation that even a later stage fairy could not deal with. What kind of monster could be so terrifying? Could the silver puppet have descended? Looking around, Su Yu's heart sank. In the whole spiritual pool, only Su Yu was left sitting cross-legged. The rest of the people had all disappeared. Even Xia Jingyu had disappeared. Su Yu was the only one left in the world that was so silent that it made one's hair stand on end. Chapter 545. Just as Su Yu was feeling bewildered, a beautiful figure suddenly appeared outside the door. Her entire body was shrouded in a watery mist. Who else could it be other than Xia Jingyu? "You're finally awake." Xia Jingyu didn't know if she was pleasantly surprised, anxious, or both. Su Yu heaved a sigh of relief. Her disappearance had caused Su Yu to panic. Unknowingly, this woman, who had sacrificed so much for him, had left a deep impression in his heart. "What happened?" Su Yu asked in surprise. A joyous expression appeared on Xia Jingyu's face. She had always been indifferent, and she rarely showed such an expression. Su Yu was quite confused by this. "Su Yu, don't talk anymore. Come with me. A real spirit has appeared." Xia Jingyu's face was filled with joy. Real spirit? Su Yu felt as if he had been struck by lightning. A real spirit was a godly existence even in the Jiuzhou continent. In fact, it was even rarer than all creation's old monsters. In the Thunder Emperor's 9 books, Su Yu had seen a brief introduction to real spirits. Every real spirit was an existence that surpassed all creation's old monsters, and they possessed power that surpassed all others. In the past, a heavily injured Thunder attribute ancient real spirit had fallen into the 18 blessed and heavenly lands, and it had been chased by 3 all creation's old monsters. In the end, the 3 all creation's old monsters never returned, and their corpses were never found. All that was found were scattered bone ashes. All 3 of them had died, and not even their bones were left. Now that he heard the word real spirit again, how could he not be shocked? Tianjizi's last words did not mention that there was a real spirit in the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion. That was a baby, and it had not yet matured. It looked like it had just hatched. Xia Jingyu's beautiful eyes were filled with excitement as she explained. "Baby?" Su Yu understood. If it had been a matured real spirit, Xia Jingyu would not have been able to escape. Who discovered it? Why did it appear in the legacy of materials? Su Yu was deep in thought. The appearance of this real spirit was unimaginable, and it was extremely unusual. Hearing this, Xia Jingyu wore a strange look as she looked at Su Yu. "We were training near the spiritual pool, when the 4 divisions mountain tumbling formation was suddenly torn apart, and that real spirit barged in." Suddenly barging in? Su Yu furrowed his brows. "As far as I know, real spirits possess extremely high spirituality, and even young real spirits possess extremely high intelligence. So, why did it barge in here for no reason? Is it because of the spirit pool?" Xia Jingyu looked at Su Yu strangely. "I need to ask you about that." Me? Su Yu was stunned. He had been immersed in the 9 jade spiritual pearl all this while, so how could he have known what was happening in the outside world? "That larva's target is you," Xia Jingyu said. "If Shangguan Qing'er had not reacted in time and blocked it, I'm afraid that the real spirit would have pounced on you and killed you while you were meditating." Did the real spirit come for Suyu? Suyu was shocked and at a loss. He could not understand how he had provoked a real spirit. What about them? Suyu's eyes flickered with excitement. If he could capture such an existence and raise it up, he would definitely be able to obtain a young real spirit. Just thinking about it was enough to excite one's heart. Even the all creation's old monsters would not be able to avoid this. Let's chase after it too. Suyu quickly made a decision. Xia Jingyu's face lit up. I came back to inform you. I will definitely help brother you catch the real spirit. Suyu was startled. Had Xia Jingyu never thought about taking the real spirit for herself? Did she only have Suyu in her heart and not him? Suyu's heart became even heavier, and he felt an indescribable pressure. All right, thank you. Suyu nodded. His body was like the wind as he left through the torn light screen. Xia Jingyu's face was filled with anticipation. That real spirit has barged into the staircase below. Shangguan Qing'er and the others have already forced it into a large formation. They are currently trying to break the formation, so I came back to inform you. Is that so? It seems like time is of the essence. As he thought of this, the vital energy crystal in Suyu's body immediately released a large amount of vital energy. Suyu felt an unprecedented amount of energy surge within his body, giving him an indescribable feeling of power. Is this vital energy? It is more than 5 times stronger than the energy produced by spiritual energy. Suyu was inwardly delighted as he felt vital energy for the first time. After spending such a long time, he had finally managed to condense vital energy. With his 1 crystal half-fairy cultivation, there shouldn't be many half-fairies who could rival him. The only ones he had to be wary of were the fairy realm experts. However, he was only wary of them. If he was forced into a corner, he might still be able to put up a fight. As he was infused with vital energy, Suyu's movement technique became more than twice as fast as before. In just a few minutes, they had reached the end of the staircase, which was a vast starry sky. It really was a starry sky. As he stood at the end of the staircase and looked at the scene before him, Suyu was slightly stunned. At the end of the staircase, there wasn't a stone wall. Instead, it was a starry sky, which was shining with a brilliant silver light. Numerous shining stars were like bright pearls in the night sky, which were embellished in the darkness of the night. They formed a starry sky that was no different from the starry sky. There were many galaxies and countless nebulas, which were exactly the same as the Milky Way seen in the outside world. The sun, the moon, and the stars were all moving around in the starry sky in their own strange ways, creating many bright lights that flickered before disappearing. This is a formation? Suyu asked in a serious voice after observing it for a while. At the end of the staircase, there were still a few people standing there, staring at the starry sky. Shangguan Qing'er, the Ghost King, and Zhou Jin all seemed to be exhausted. They were looking at the starry sky in a daze, anxious, helpless, and unwilling. That's right, it's a formation. Shangguan Qing'er turned to look at Suyu. She wasn't in the mood to tease him, so she said in a deep voice, "It's still the most troublesome, wisest galaxy formation. In the 18 blessed and heavenly lands, the wisest galaxy formation is known as the strongest defensive formation. It's even stronger than the 4 divisions mountain tumbling formation. It's not something we can break." Shangguan Qing'er was secretly annoyed. In fact, this formation had existed for a long time, and its power was far inferior to the real wisest galaxy formation. With her fairy realm fighting power, it wasn't impossible for her to break it with brute force. However, there was another seal in the center of the formation. Anyone whose cultivation was higher than the fairy realm would be forcibly transferred out of the wisest galaxy formation and back to the staircase. Hence, no matter how close Shangguan Qing'er got to the center of the formation, she would be transferred back. She wouldn't have the chance to get close to the center of the formation, so all her efforts would be in vain. The most detestable thing was that the infant real spirit was extremely intelligent, and it was hiding in the center of the formation on purpose. As such, Shangguan Qing'er could only look on helplessly, unable to do anything about it. Sensing Su Yu's arrival, Zhou Jin furrowed his brows, and the Ghost King was a little displeased. The infant real spirit was something that could only be found by chance, and one more person meant one more competitor. Chapter 546. At first glance, it looked like a black cocoon. Zhou Jin transformed into a black ball of light. With a low grunt, his body charged into the starry sky. Suddenly, a very strange scene appeared. Zhou Jin's speed was extremely fast, but when he entered the starry sky, in the eyes of the people on the stairs, his movements seemed to have been slowed down by 10 times. His movements were slow, as if he was walking slowly. The sun, moon, and stars in the starry sky continued to move in their original strange way. Their speed was not fast, but to Zhou Jin, who was 10 times slower, it was like a flash of lightning. What was even more peculiar was that those simple trajectories seemed to be filled with an extremely mysterious meaning. Bang! A star fiercely collided with Zhou Jin, sending him flying. Then, a second star hit him, sending him flying again. But just as it stopped, a third star hit him again with a mysterious trajectory. Just like that, 9 times in a row, the trajectory of the stars did not change, but every star hit Zhou Jin accurately, sending him flying back down the stairs. That's it. No matter how we enter, we will always be knocked back like this, Xia Jingyu said helplessly. She had suffered from this formation before. The Ghost King sighed, looking at the center of the formation with regret. Shangguan Qing'er's small face was filled with dissatisfaction. Humph, I don't believe I can't enter. Whoosh, as a fairy, Shangguan Qing'er's speed was much faster than Zhou Jin's after entering the starry sky. But the strange thing was, there was still a star that directly hit her body. Even more strangely, although she was trying her best to avoid it, she could not avoid it. She was knocked to the side. Then, the second star crashed into his body. Seeing that the third star was about to hit her body, Shangguan Qing'er was enraged. She snorted coldly and took out a wooden puppet. It was an extremely blurry wooden puppet. One could only see its outline, but not its facial features. It could be vaguely seen that it was in the shape of a woman. When the puppet appeared, Su Yu's heart trembled. The puppet's body emitted a very strange wave. When it came into contact with the wave, Su Yu's blind eyes produced a ray of light. The strangest thing was that Su Yu's abilities, which had been sealed due to his blindness, were all released. The power of time, the power of space, and the pure divinity were all released. Although he couldn't unleash his full power, it was still shocking. Who was the owner of the wooden puppet? The waves emitted by it could actually heal Su Yu's eyes. The Ghost King and Zhou Jin, on the other hand, were filled with fear. They looked at the puppet warily. After the fluctuation was released, the star that was about to collide with Shangguan Qing'er strangely avoided it. The mysteries of the movement of the stars seemed to be affected by the power hidden in the wooden puppet. Seizing the opportunity, Shangguan Qing'er flew into the depths of the formation. Just as she approached the center of the array formation suddenly trembled. The sun, moon, and stars rotated rapidly, as if the stars were moving. Shangguan Qing'er, who was clearly near the center of the formation, was suddenly transferred back to the top of the stairs. After failing again, Shangguan Qing'er was flustered and exasperated. Damn it! How can there be such a formation? Anyone who tried repeatedly would fail on the verge of success. Everyone failed one after another, and they almost lost all hope in this array formation. Right at that moment, 3 air-rending sounds could be heard flying down from above. They were by Yijian and his son Baizhe, who had sensed the commotion at the bottom of the stairs. Behind them was a woman, Xing Xuelian. Don't waste your energy. In the center of the wisest galaxy formation, there is a talisman left behind by an all-creation's old monster. If a person of the fairy realm tries to barge in, he or she will be transported back. If it were possible, I would have passed through the formation long ago. Hearing this, Su Yu's gaze shifted. This must be the reason why Bai Yijian was willing to open up the final legacy of the materials. He could not enter the final place by himself. Hearing this, Shangguanqing'er turned around and asked, "Are you saying that I can't enter?" Bai Yijian smiled. "If the fairy realm could enter, I would not have allowed outsiders like you to share the legacy of the materials with us, the descendants of the guards." He did not hide his intentions at all. Shangguanqing'er did not find it strange. Instead, she felt relieved. The indignant look on her face was replaced by a sense of relief. Her body flashed and she moved to the side, closing her eyes to rest. Bai Yijian's expression was a little gloomy. "What do you plan to do?" Shangguanqing'er smiled sweetly. "Of course I plan to do the same thing as you." Without a doubt, the two of them, who were both fairy realm experts, had the same idea: to plunder. They would allow the half-fairies to enter to search for the legacy of the materials, while the two of them would wait outside. As long as they searched the bodies of the people who came out, they would be able to plunder all of their belongings. Su Yu calmly looked at the two of them, while the Ghost King let out a vague, cold laugh. Zhou Jin's face fell. This formation was left behind by an all-creation's old man, and it is called the wisest galaxy formation. The formation contains the old man's understanding of the divine decree. Once you enter it, it is equivalent to entering his divine decree. If you are unable to break free from the attacks of his divine decree, you will never be able to enter the center of the formation. The center of the formation is the last secret place that leads to the legacy of the materials. There are also the two most important materials there. Whoever is lucky enough to obtain them will be the one who is blessed. Bai Yijian smiled. However, his smile was laced with an undetectable coldness. It was obvious that he would not allow anyone to snatch away the materials that belonged to him. However, the people present did not reveal the fact that the real spirit was in the center of the formation. The Ghost King calmly said, "After saying so much, you still do not understand how we are supposed to enter the center of the formation." Bai Yijian smiled. "It is very simple. Try. Try countless times. This formation has existed for a very long time. The symbols in the center have also aged. Hence, there will occasionally be a flaw. Whether or not you can find the flaw and enter the center of the formation depends on your abilities." Bai Yijian was implying that they should keep trying and wait for an opportunity to appear. Then, he calmly said, "Of course, if you can resist the divine decree within, you will also be able to enter the center." Zhou Jin coldly grunted. "Resist the divine decree of an all-creation's old monster? Even a divine master might not be able to do that." Knowing that the only way to enter the formation was through the stupidest method, how could anyone be in a good mood? Bai Yijian's smile remained the same. I advise you to quickly prepare yourself. This flaw appears once every 6 hours. It looks like it will appear within the next 2 hours. If you miss it, you will have to wait for another 6 hours. Su Yu's eyes glowed. Resist the divine decree? Deep within his pupils, a hint of a smile appeared. Chapter 547. As Bai Yijian spoke, he pushed the two people who were standing behind him forward. They were his son, Baizhe, and Xing Xuelian. Xing Xuelian had also successfully passed through the stone statue forest? This was unexpected. As far as he could remember, this woman only had the cultivation of one vital energy crystal. She was even weaker than Jing Zijing, who had barely made it through. It was truly a surprise that she had been able to pass through. Bai Qi and Zhou Jin also noticed Xing Xuelian's presence and frowned slightly. They were also surprised that Xing Xuelian had also made it through safely. The two of you should get ready as well. Whoever can withstand the divine decree left behind by the all-creation's old monster for a long time will have a higher chance of reaching the center of the spell formation first. You both know how much of an opportunity you will get. Alright, I won't say any more. Let's go. Bai Yijian waved his sleeves and Bai Zhe, who was behind him, entered the Ruoying River formation first. Unlike Zhou Jin, Bai Zhe's situation was very different when he entered the Milky Way formation. Bai Zhe's body was much slower under the influence of the divine decree. However, the difference was that when the first meteorite came crashing down, Bai Zhe was able to dodge it easily. This was something that Zhou Jin could never achieve. Seeing this, Zhou Jin secretly clenched his fists, feeling embarrassed. Others could do the same thing, but he could not. Soon after, the second meteorite came crashing down. Bai Zhe closed his eyes, not intending to resist the power of the stars. Instead, he closed his eyes and slowly released a mysterious rhythm. It might have been unfamiliar to others, but it was very familiar to Su Yu and Xia Jingyu. The divine decree. And it's of the divine grade. Su Yu was slightly surprised. He did not expect that there would be someone else besides him and Xia Jingyu who had cultivated the divine decree to such a level. According to Yun Yazi, most people did not understand the use of the divine decree in the future. It was the key to determining whether a person could reach a higher level. However, after thinking about it, Bai Yijian was the descendant of Tianjizi's disciple. Perhaps he understood the significance of the divine decree? Within the spell, Bai Zhe consecutively passed through 2-star orbit. Bai Yijian nodded in satisfaction. Not bad. Shangguan Qing'er leaned against the stone wall calmly and said disapprovingly, "In order to enter the Milky Way and collect the materials that you need, the entire clan of the Guardians is trying to comprehend the divine decree left behind by that all creation's old monster. I think that even a pig would have some achievements. What's the big deal about passing through 2 paths? It won't be too late to talk about it after he passes through the 5th path." Bai Yijian did not speak. He looked at Bai Zhe helplessly, but at the same time, his eyes were filled with anticipation. How could Bai Zhe, who was in the formation, not hear Shangguan Qing'er's indifferent tone? He could not help but feel angry, and he unleashed his divine decree in one breath. At this time, he had entered the 3rd-star trajectory. Compared to the previous 2 times, he was clearly straining, and his expression was replaced with caution and seriousness. The mysterious divine will released from his body became more and more intense, but his figure was not as natural and easy as before. Bang! A star almost brushed past his thigh. He had barely managed to avoid the attack. Before Bai Zhe could heave a sigh of relief, the star from the 4th path crashed into him. Bai Zhe's expression changed, and he hurriedly used his own divine decree to resist the descent of the divine decree. Bang! This time, although he tried his best to avoid it, the star still crashed into his calf. His figure suddenly became messy, and he found it difficult to control his body. Right at this moment, the star from the 5th path crashed into him naturally. Bai Zhe was knocked back without any complaint. At the same time, the stars from the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd paths also crashed into him naturally. After 5 consecutive collisions, Bai Zhe was knocked back. Although the wisest Milky Way formation was powerful, its original purpose was to prevent people from entering, not to harm them. Hence, although it seemed like the collisions were continuous, the people who entered were knocked back, and they did not cause much harm. However, for those who were extremely prideful, such a sorry state was unbearable for them. Bai Zhe's face was gloomy, and he looked extremely annoyed. He crawled out of the Milky Way formation and went ashore. Su Yu turned around and said to Xia Jingyu, "Let's give it a try." Xia Jingyu was eager to give it a try, but there was a hint of fear in her beautiful eyes. It was obvious that she had suffered some losses in this formation before. When they went down, Bai Zhe crawled back up in a sorry state. Bai Zhe felt that everyone present was watching him make a fool of himself, and he could vaguely hear many people gloating over his misfortune. This was especially so for Shangguan Qing'er, who did not even try to hide the look in her eyes. This made Bai Zhe, who was already embarrassed, feel even more humiliated. At this moment, as he brushed past Su Yu and Xia Jingyu, He also sensed that Su Yu seemed to be mocking him. This made Baizhi angry. If it was Shangguan Qing'er, he would not dare to say anything. However, Su Yu, a mere human king, dared to mock him. He really did not know what was good for him. "Stop right there!" Baizhi's face immediately turned cold, and he coldly shouted, blocking their path. Su Yu was stunned and he frowned slightly. "What? Do you have any advice for me?" "Humph! Do you think you are worthy of mocking me?" Baizhi's face turned cold. "I look down on weaklings like you who are inferior to others and take pleasure in others' misfortune the most. Your weak cultivation can be remedied, and I will not look down on you. However, you are a weakling from the bottom of your heart, and I really look down on people like you." Su Yu and Xia Jingyu were stunned. They did not look like they were mocking Baizhi at all. In fact, as divine decree cultivators, they had even praised Baizhi's divine decree. Su Yu was stunned for a moment, but he quickly realized what was going on. He was not mocking Baizhi, but Baizhi himself had lost face, and he wanted to redeem himself by reprimanding Su Yu. In terms of disdain, Shangguan Qing'er was naked. 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 He did not dare to look for Shangguan Qing'er to mock him, so he could only look for someone like Su Yu, who was easy to bully. After all, Su Yu was only a human king, so he was easy to deal with. Under normal circumstances, Su Yu could not be bothered with such a person. However, they were about to enter the Milky Way formation to search for the final place of legacy. If he left the impression that he was easy to bully, he would be in trouble once they entered. He had no choice but to teach Baizhi an unforgettable lesson. "Are you very strong? How strong are you? Are you stronger than the fairy realm?" Su Yu asked. "You grew up in the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion, and yet you have not broken through to the fairy realm. Don't you think you are useless?" The mysterious heavenly divine pavilion was many times more abundant than the outside world. Jojo did not know, but the thin spiritual energy in the Zhenlong continent was not even a fifth of the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion. If Su Yu had grown up in such an environment, he might have broken through to the fairy realm long ago. Chapter 548. As for Bai Yijian, he was deep in thought for a moment. His eyes were filled with worry. In his opinion, Su Yu was right. Even though the descendants of the guards had such an excellent land filled with resources, the probability of them breaking through to the fairy realm was so low. It was obvious that their descendants' cultivation talents were getting worse with each generation. Although there was the restriction of not being able to leave the 5 mountains, which led to their lack of experience, overall, they were indeed not as good as the people of the outside world in terms of cultivation. Little brother, before talking about others, it's best to weigh yourself first. Bai Yijian's expression was calm. He naturally had to speak up for his son, even though he knew that the other party was right. What he was implying was that Su Yu's abilities were inferior to others, so how could he have the face to teach others a lesson? Su Yu shook his head. "I have never thought that I would be weaker than someone who needs to step on the weak to increase his prestige." Baizhi raised his eyebrows and his eyes flickered with surprise. Su Yu actually dared to challenge him. This was unexpected. "Are you saying that you are very strong?" Baizhi's eyes turned cold, and a fierce light flashed in his eyes. Su Yu nodded calmly. "Yes, not bad. I should be stronger than you." "Is that so?" Baizhi's whole body emitted a dangerous aura as he stared at Su Yu. Suddenly, he flicked his sleeve and threw out a bone spear that was shrouded in true energy. It was unknown what the bone spur was refined from, but it was extremely cold and gave people a shivering feeling. When he threw it out, Su Yu and Xia Jingyu felt a gloomy and cold sensation. Su Yu also felt a bloody aura from it. Moreover, it was a fresh smell of blood. He had killed a lot of people, not just 1 or 2. "Humph!" Su Yu coldly snorted. Facing the sinister bone spur, he did not retreat. Instead, he advanced forward. A small golden sword was spinning in his palm. With a flash of golden light, the small sword disappeared from the air at the same time. When it reappeared, it was already right next to Baija's neck. With a spin, it was about to slice off Baija's neck. Baija was indeed a great circle half-immortal expert. His reaction was extremely fast. The moment the small golden sword disappeared, he realized that something was wrong. As he retreated, he took out a jade pendant from his sleeve. The jade pendant exuded a gentle aura. Milk. The white energy was like water ripples, flowing on the surface of her fair body. The small golden sword slashed down. Milk. On the other hand, the white energy seemed to have fallen into mud, and its speed immediately slowed down. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Baishi continuously retreated, avoiding this extremely dangerous teleportation sword. Semi-manufactured spiritual weapon? I've really underestimated you. Now that Baija's plan had failed, he became even more humiliated. His face was contorted in anger, and it was as if Su Yu was the one who had caused him to suffer losses in the wisest Milky Way formation. Su Yu said expressionlessly, "This is your so-called ability? It doesn't seem like much. How dare you pretend to be profound with such insignificant skills? Aren't you afraid of laughing your head off?" Baija snorted coldly, "Take this." However, Su Yu, who was opposite him, looked relaxed. He wasn't in a hurry to attack. Instead, he shook his head in disappointment and said, "You misunderstood me. What I meant was, how could you lose so quickly?" Lost? Baija was stunned for a moment before he felt a slight chill on the back of his neck. He reached behind him and felt a sticky sensation on his palm. Baija's pupils shrank when he looked at his hands. His hands were covered in blood. The skin on the back of his neck had been sliced open, and there was a line of blood flowing from it. Baija's heart skipped a beat, and his pupils shrank. When did this happen? When did someone cut open his back? Although it was only a layer of skin, it was obvious that Su Yu had been merciful. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been difficult for such a stealthy sword to slice off his entire neck. The people who were watching the battle looked at Su Yu with a hint of fear in their eyes. In their eyes, Su Yu had actually taken out two identical golden swords. One of them had attacked Baija from the front, distracting him, while the second one had silently appeared behind him. Who would have thought that a mere human king would possess two sets of weapons? Moreover, both of them were so powerful. If they had been as careless as Baija, they might have really died at Su Yu's hands. Swoosh! Su Yu raised his hand and made a grabbing motion. Then, two streaks of golden light appeared in his palm. Looking at Su Yu casually sheathing his sword, Baija was both embarrassed and angry. He looked like he had just won the battle. He had wanted to teach someone a lesson, but in the end, someone else had taught him a lesson and spared his life. How humiliating was that? Su Yu sheathed his golden swords and did not say anything. Instead, he said to Xia Jingyu, "Let's go in." After saying this, he turned and stepped into the Milky Way. However, at that moment, Baija struggled for a moment. His expression was replaced by a ferocious expression, and a cold, murderous intent flashed in his eyes. Swoosh! The moment Su Yu stepped into the Milky Way, Baija, who was standing with his back to them, suddenly had a vicious look in his eyes. Then, a mass of gray air shot out of his eyes towards Su Yu and Xia Jingyu. This gray stream of air did not have a physical body. It was something that existed on a spiritual level. It was similar to a soul, but different at the same time. It was the divine decree. The divine decree was the embodiment of a person's inner feelings. Baija's personality was evil, so the divine decree was very cold and made people feel uncomfortable. Even a slight contact with it would cause their souls to feel pain. The gray stream of air, which was like a river, surged towards the defenseless Su Yu and Xia Jingyu. Shangguan Qing'er's expression changed. How could she have expected Baija to launch a sneak attack? Su Yu had clearly spared his life. However, Baija's attack had been too sudden. Apart from Bai Yijian, who was standing nearby, no one else could have intervened in time. However, after Bai Yijian furrowed his brows, his body did not move. He did not try to stop Bai Zhe. Seeing that Su Yu and Xia Jingyu were about to launch a sneak attack, Su Yu coldly snorted as if he had eyes on the back of his head. I knew you would have this trick up your sleeve. Eat my divine decree as well. Su Yu coldly snorted. 2 beams of purple and white light shot out from his eyes. It was the state of a divine-grade divine decree. The beam of light shot out immediately, piercing through the gray stream of air. Although they were both divine decrees, Su Yu had already reached the level of pure divine decree, which was much more solid than Bai Yijian's. The gray stream of air was instantly pierced through, then dispersed. The beam of divine decree, which had been formed by the fusion of thunder and flames, struck towards Bai Zhe. How could Bai Zhe have expected that Su Yu would be able to directly destroy his divine decree when he had clearly launched a sneak attack on Su Yu? He had no time to defend himself against such a counterattack. Crack! Just as the beam of light was about to pierce through Bai Zhe's body, a large hand reached out from the side and crushed the beam of light. Chapter 549. At the critical moment, Bai Yijian had made his move and crushed the beam of light formed by the divine decree. Su Yu was not surprised that he had made his move. If he had just watched his son get killed, Su Yu would have been surprised. What surprised him was Bai Yijian's divine decree. Crushing the divine decree with his bare hands was not something that could be done by someone with a high cultivation level. Only someone with a high-level divine decree would be able to do so. Bai Yijian's divine decree was most likely above divine grade. Su Yu wondered if he had broken through to the pure realm like Su Yu. However, after thinking about it, Su Yu rejected this conjecture. If Bai Yijian had the pure divine decree, he would not have been blocked by the divine decree left behind by Tianjizi. Although Tianjizi's cultivation level was high, the divine decree left behind by Tianjizi was not to be underestimated. However, Su Yu had witnessed Tianjizi's remnant while being destroyed. Even his remnant soul could not withstand the baptism of time, let alone the divine decree left behind. If he had guessed correctly, the divine decree within the wisest Milky Way formation was not as strong as it had been in the past. It was getting weaker with each generation, and now it was only slightly stronger than a divine-grade divine decree. Bai Yijian's divine decree was not as strong as the one here. If I did not use my full strength, I'm afraid you would have watched as your son ambushed me and killed me, right? Su Yu asked calmly. From the beginning to the end, his son had provoked him for no reason, and Su Yu had spared his life. However, his son did not know what was good for him and dared to ambush Su Yu. Throughout the entire process, Bai Yijian, who had the best chance of stopping Su Yu, had remained calm and collected. It was only when the situation had changed beyond his expectations, that his son had met with an accident and was about to be killed, that Bai Yijian stood up with a look of blame. If it had been someone with a normal cultivation level, he would have been killed by his son's sneak attack. He did not reflect on his actions, nor did he feel any shame. Instead, he had shamelessly blamed Su Yu. Bai Yijian's eyes gradually turned cold. Young man, even if my son was in the wrong, why did you use such a heavy hand? What do you want to say? Just say it. Su Yu did not answer, but instead said expressionlessly. He did not believe that someone who had lived for such a long time and was the leader of a bloodline would be so lacking in shrewdness as to do such a thing in public. From his previous performance, it was clear that Bai Yijian was not such a stupid person. Hearing this, Bai Yijian, who had a cold expression on his face, had a flash of surprise in his eyes. He looked at Su Yu's deep eyes and was secretly surprised. The expression on Bai Yijian's face changed, and the cold expression on his face gradually disappeared. He stared at Su Yu for a long time before letting out a soft breath. Let's put this matter aside for now. However, after this, I will need you to give me an explanation. Explanation? Shangguan Qinger, the Ghost King, Zhou Jin, and the others rolled their eyes. Could there be some sort of connection between Su Yu and Bai Yijian? Su Yu raised his brows slightly. An explanation? Your Excellency, how did you manage to break through to the one crystal half-fairy level? I believe you are well aware of it. As the guardian of this place and the descendant of that elder, I must confirm it for you. Bai Yijian stared at Su Yu. Su Yu sighed in his heart. So, Bai Yijian still managed to detect it in the end. Although he had tried his best to hide the fact that he had used the Milky Way star's Emperor-based Saint artifact, he had managed to hide it from Shangguan Qing'er, who had mistaken him for an ancient bloodline. However, he could not hide it from Bai Yijian, who was familiar with this place. What could have allowed a pool of spiritual liquid to push a human king to the level of half-fairy? Apart from the 10% of spiritual stones that were mixed with impurities, there was nothing else. As the descendant of Tianjizi's disciple, he was most likely to know about the treasures that were mixed with the impurities. Hence, when Su Yu had fought with Bai Zhe and revealed his cultivation level, Bai Yijian had discovered it. However, he did not do anything about it. Instead, he played along and prepared to take the opportunity to attack Su Yu and subdue him. This was why Bai Yijian was acting so strangely. However, why should Su Yu give him an explanation? Haha, what if I say no? Su Yu said coldly. In Tianjizi's last words, the three disciples, as well as their descendants, had guarded the 5 paths of legacy for generations to come until it was taken away by someone else. However, when it came to their generation, Bai Yijian had stolen the 5 paths of legacy. Not only did he steal the various legacies, but he also set up many dangers to trap and kill those who came to train. Now, he had the audacity to claim to be the descendant of Tianjizi's disciple and ask to inspect Su Yu. Do you think you have a choice? Bai Yijian said calmly, as if he was certain that Su Yu would win. I'm afraid it is not up to you. When we come out of the legacy, I will personally inspect you. After saying this, he waved his sleeves, gesturing to the crowd. Let's move quickly. Whether or not you can enter the legacy will depend on your own luck. After saying this, he closed his eyes and rested, waiting leisurely. Su Yu's eyes narrowed, a cold smile flashing in his eyes. It was as if Bai Yijian felt that everything was under his control, and that he would definitely be able to defeat Su Yu. Su Yu's eyes flashed with a cold light. He calmly looked at Bai Zhe, who was still in a state of shock. He then nonchalantly looked away. Although Su Yu did not say a word, the look of disregard in his eyes made Bai Zhe feel even worse. He thought that he was stronger than Su Yu, but in reality, Su Yu had an absolute advantage over him. Zhou Jin was feeling the same way as Bai Zhe. Su Yu was much stronger than he had expected. Could it be that after breaking through to half-fairy, Su Yu's combat power had increased to such an extent? He did not think that he was much stronger than Bai Zhe. Zhou Jin was shocked. Swoosh, Su Yu ignored the gazes around him and stepped into the wisest Milky Way formation with Xia Jingyu. Bai Qi and Zhou Jin did not dare delay, and they entered the formation once again. Bai Zhe stared at Su Yu's back, his eyes flickering. He clenched his teeth and chased after them. As soon as he entered, Su Yu felt as if he had entered another time flow. He did not feel any suppression, but his speed was inexplicably slow. It was as if he had entered a space where time had slowed down. Unknowingly, Su Yu could sense the existence of a faintly discernible, vast divine decree. Under the influence of this divine decree, everything in the world moved according to its trajectory. The sun, moon, stars, intruders, time. Everything was controlled by the divine decree. Hence, unless one could resist the divine decree, anyone who entered would be sent out by the trajectory the divine decree had arranged for them. Tianjizi's divine decree is the trajectory? Su Yu murmured. His and Xia Jingyu's divine decree was derived from nature. It was the nature divine decree. The divine decree before them was the trajectory, which allowed everything in the universe to follow its trajectory. Such a mysterious divine decree made Su Yu gasp in amazement. With a thought, Su Yu and Xia Jingyu released their divine-grade divine decrees at the same time. Su Yu's divine-grade holy decree was of nature. The divine decree of thunder and ice surrounded his body, forming a halo that was difficult to see with the naked eye. Under this halo, Su Yu could clearly feel a sense of disharmony within the Milky Way formation. This was due to the divine decree being affected, and the trajectory had changed. However, the divine decree in this place was unusually strong. After the trajectory had deviated, it took on another trajectory and enveloped Su Yu and the others. Chapter 550. Baizha had used his own divine will to forcefully influence the trajectory of the star's trajectory, but he still couldn't escape from the entire divine will. Therefore, although it looked like he had passed through a few stars, he had been driven out of the trajectory and had long since been fixed. Thinking back, Su Yu was secretly surprised. This divine decree actually had a hint of destiny in it. As long as one was in the trajectory, one's destiny was already determined. As expected of Senior Tianjizi. Even after falling for so many years, the remnants of his divine decree still have such a shocking and mysterious rhythm. Su Yu's eyes were filled with admiration as he realized something. At that moment, the Ghost King and Zhou Jin were in the same situation. They could not go far at all before being knocked back by the stars. This happened 3 times, but they still could not get any closer. Although Baizha was much better off than them, he could not escape the trajectory, and was eventually knocked back. At that moment, a star followed the trajectory and crashed into Su Yu and the others. According to the original trajectory, the 2 of them would have been knocked back as well. However, Su Yu and Xia Jingyu were not ordinary people. The 2 of them displayed their divine decrees at the same time. Su Yu's divine decree of ice and thunder, and Xia Jingyu's divine decree of water. When the 2 divine-grade divine decrees appeared, their trajectories became chaotic. The star that was crashing towards them deviated slightly and brushed past them. "Brother Yu, there seems to be something on the star," Xia Jingyu said softly all of a sudden. Su Yu looked over and saw that there seemed to be a black box embedded in the star. Before this, he had not had the time to pay attention to the star, as his attention had been focused on the entire formation. Now that he was close enough, he had accidentally discovered the existence of the black iron box. Su Yu raised his hand and a palm appeared in the air, sucking the black iron box down from the star. He found that the box was empty, and there were only remnants of crafting materials. Su Yu's eyes flashed as he scanned the surroundings, taking in all the stars into his soul eyes. His eyes were filled with shock. With his transparent eyes, Su Yu discovered that the black iron box on this star wasn't just a coincidence. Instead, it existed on every single star. Most of them were empty, and only the black iron boxes near the central area contained items. They were all materials that Su Yu could not name, but were full of spirituality. After thinking for a moment, Su Yu's eyes shone brightly. He looked at Bai Yijian and said, "He, are you still trying to hide it now? Brother Yu, what's wrong?" Xia Jingyu's long eyelashes fluttered as she asked in confusion. Su Yu said with a faint smile, "I was careless and only realized it now. I was almost deceived by them." Looking at Xia Jingyu's confused face, Su Yu said softly, "Actually, we are currently in the legacy of materials." Hearing this, Xia Jingyu was taken aback. However, as smart as she was, she immediately looked at the black metal chest beneath her feet. She asked in bewilderment, "Brother Yu, are you saying?" "That's right, every star in the formation has a black metal box, which contains the materials for the succession. We were in the inheritance, but we didn't know anything. If it wasn't for you, Jingyu, I wouldn't have guessed it either." Xia Jingyu's eyes were filled with shock. "You mean to say that this place is the inheritance of materials, but he tricked us to another place? If that's the case, where's the other inheritance ground?" The 2 of them sensed that something was amiss. It seemed like Bai Yijian was hiding a deep secret. Su Yu shook his head. I don't know, but it's definitely not the last inheritance that he mentioned. We have to be careful. At that moment, another star came crashing down. Su Yu and Xia Jingyu released their divine decree once again, narrowly avoiding it. After 4 consecutive attempts, they finally passed through half of the formation and arrived at the place where Baizha had been before. This scene caused by Qi and Zhou Jinman, who had yet to advance even half an inch, to feel their expressions turn gloomy. Bai Yijian's eyes shone brightly as he said in surprise, "Oh? In this era there are still humans who are willing to cultivate the divine decree?" In a world where martial arts were the most important, the divine decree was rarely valued. Firstly, it was extremely difficult to comprehend, as it required too much energy and time. Apart from the long-lived all creation's old monsters, ordinary martial artists were not willing to spend their time on the divine decree. Secondly, the rewards were not proportional to the effort. Spending an endless amount of time to comprehend the divine decree would result in a limited amount of power. At least, no one had ever heard of a strong martial artist who was famous for his divine decree. Even for the descendants of the guards, the purpose of cultivating the divine decree was to enter the wisest Milky Way formation and collect the materials on the stars. There was almost no one who could comprehend the divine decree on their own. However, the 2 young people before him were so strange. Not only did they comprehend it, but they also had great attainments. Baizha's divine decree was built on the descendants of the guardians, and it was only because of his many years of experience in comprehending the divine decree. However, Su Yu and Xia Jingyu obviously did not have such a background. What he did not know was that Xia Jingyu's level of comprehension was extraordinary, and she was not human. As for Su Yu, he relied on the divine 9-dragon cauldron, which allowed him to spend a lot of time on comprehension. Otherwise, Su Yu would not have chosen the path of the divine decree. However, their divine decree is on par with Zhi's. The 5th track should be their track. Bai Yijian muttered to himself. However, before he could finish his sentence, he stopped abruptly. Bai Yijian's expression froze, and a look of shock appeared on his face. Just as they were about to be smashed by the star, Su Yu and Xia Jingyu suddenly increased their speed by 2-fold, forcefully breaking away from the tracks and successfully stepping into the 6th track. Shangguan Qing'er, who had a tranquil expression, finally had a change in her eyes. Suspicion flickered in her eyes. Power of time. Could it be that this is also his ancient bloodline? This was indeed the power of time from the divine 9-dragon cauldron. Previously, under the influence of the wisest Milky Way formation, his eyes had recovered a little, allowing him to release the pupil technique that had been suppressed for a long time. He could have instantly sped up the space-time around him by 3 times, but now, he was limited to a single time. The power of time? This lad is very strange. However, he barely managed to dodge it just now, and I'm afraid it will be impossible for him to do so again. The divine decree gets stronger the further he goes, and the 6th track is most likely his limit. Bai Yijian, who was very familiar with this place, was not optimistic about Su Yu's chances. At that moment, the star on the 6th track came crashing towards them. Su Yu and Xia Jingyu's expressions changed slightly. Without hesitation, Su Yu once again used the power of time to double his speed. However, just as they were about to charge through it, something strange happened. The star on the last 5 tracks suddenly teleported to all 4 sides of Su Yu, sandwiching them in the middle. Such a method of breaking away from the tracks was unexpected. The last track is the sum of all the tracks in front of it, and each one is stronger than the last. Apart from the occasional weak flaw, no one can rely on their own divine decree to charge through the formation. Bai Yijian sighed. It's a pity that it was not easy to charge through the 6th track. Chapter 551. Shangguan Qing'er stared at Su Yu, her eyes filled with disbelief. Su Yu, who was surrounded by many stars, suddenly shot out a beam of divine light from his eyes. The divine light was like the eye of the heavens, overlooking all living things and controlling their life and death. It was a majesty that could not be looked at directly and could not be defied. It was like the heavens. Shangguan Qing'er suddenly had an illusion that it was not the majesty of a human, but the majesty of the heavens, the unfathomable majesty of the heavens. Wherever the divine light of the heavens passed, the stars were thrown into chaos and their trajectories collapsed. It was not just the sixth trajectory. The seventh, eighth, ninth, all the stars in the sky, all the Milky Way were all thrown into chaos. The Ghost King, Zhou Jin, and Bai Zhe, who were persevering in the Milky Way, were caught off guard and pulled into the Milky Way. Puff! Zhou Jin was the unluckiest. Everything had happened so suddenly, and he had just entered the third trajectory, brushing past a star. Unexpectedly, the star suddenly rolled backwards. It was not as it had been before, but instead crashed into it with the force of a raging wave. Under the terrifying force, his protective vital energy was shattered on the spot. His chest was flattened, and his broken ribs pierced through his flesh. His body was knocked into the depths of the Milky Way, and it was unknown whether he was dead or alive. The Ghost King and Baijia's expressions changed drastically as they looked at the Milky Way that was crazily rolling backwards. They were on the periphery where there were fewer stars. Although they had been pulled into the Milky Way, they could still see the overall situation of the entire Milky Way. After taking a closer look, the two of them revealed looks of horror at the same time. The entire Milky Way was in the shape of a whirlpool, rolling continuously. In the center of the whirlpool, a silver-haired young man was holding a woman's hand, standing quietly. All the stars were revolving around him, as if he was the king of this place. Under their shocked gazes, Su Yu calmly took a step forward while holding Xia Jingyu's hand. As he took a step forward, the entire Milky Way shook violently. The huge, turbulent whirlpool moved forward along with his step. To be precise, the place under his feet was the center of the Milky Way. Just like that, under their shocked gazes, Su Yu stepped on the Milky Way and walked deeper into it. Within a few breaths, he had appeared in the center of the Milky Way, where the ninth trajectory was. Bai Yijian's expression was unprecedentedly serious as he looked at the silver-haired young man in disbelief. The pure divine decree. He's only 17. Is that even possible? Shangguan Qing'er's eyes were filled with splendor. For the first time, she felt that Su Yu's back was exceptionally tall. Even in the 18 blessed and heavenly lands, only those old monsters who had lived for countless years could grasp the pure divine decree. They had a lot of time to comprehend it. It was inconceivable that such a divine will would appear on a 17-year-old youth. Shangguan Qing'er was shocked, and she could not help but sink into deep thought. What kind of ancient bloodline does he have? Absorbing impurities, controlling time, and now the pure divine decree. For the first time, Shangguan Qing'er began to doubt Su Yu's identity as someone with the ancient bloodline. It wasn't that his ancient bloodline was too weak, but rather that his various abilities were too powerful. It didn't seem like an ancient bloodline at all. What Su Yu used was the heavenly eyes that he had condensed. Although he had only released a tiny bit of it, compared to the track divine decree that had lost its master, Su Yu was still a notch above it. Under the absolute suppression, trajectory's divine decree naturally collapsed. Xia Jingyu followed behind Su Yu quietly, a faint smile on her face. It seemed that from the moment they had met, Su Yu had always been her strongest shield, always resolving her crises and shielding her from the storm. From the beginning to the end, no matter how strong she became, this man would always be stronger than her. In this world, it seemed that only this man could give her a sense of security and peace. The two of them stood in the center of the Milky Way. Su Yu stopped in his tracks and looked at Xia Jingyu, who was smiling inexplicably. "What's so funny? I thought you would be surprised." In terms of comprehension, Su Yu only surpassed Xia Jingyu in the aspect of the divine decree. Hearing this, Xia Jingyu smiled like a flower. I won't be surprised no matter what level Brother Yu's training has reached, because you are Su Yu. Is it because he is Su Yu? Xia Jingyu trusted Su Yu very much. Su Yu smiled and focused his attention on the center of the Milky Way. Thousands of Milky Ways swirled in reverse. Only a star with a diameter of 1,000 feet stood in front of him, unmoving. This Milky Way was a mysterious place that the descendants of the guards had never set foot in. 4 generations they had only been able to step into the 8th trajectory. They had never been able to break through the 9th trajectory. Jingyu, what did the real spirit look like? Su Yu's soul eyes scanned the star and asked in surprise. Xia Jingyu shook her head slightly. I don't know. It was too fast, we didn't see it clearly. Only Shangguan Qing'er confirmed that it was the real spirit and subconsciously shouted. Only then did we know that it was the real spirit that attacked you. Is that so? Su Yu touched his chin, a strange look on his face. Brother Yu, did you find the real spirit? Xia Jingyu's eyes were filled with excitement. Su Yu shook his head thoughtfully. That's the strange thing. You all saw the real spirit escape into the Milky Way, but there was no living creature here. How could that be? Xia Jingyu frowned. It shouldn't be. It's fine if I was the only one who saw it wrongly, but not everyone saw it wrongly. It really did hide in the center of the Milky Way. Could it be that it was proficient in space escape techniques and could escape from all of us? Xia Jingyu couldn't understand it, and her heart was filled with disappointment. However, Su Yu didn't look disappointed. Instead, he looked excited. We didn't come here in vain. The value of the materials left behind on this star is immeasurable. With a swoosh, Su Yu pulled Xia Jingyu and landed on the star. The star was unknown, but it was terrifyingly hard. When Su Yu and Xia Jingyu stepped on it, there wasn't even the slightest vibration. It was obvious that the star was extremely dense. However, he didn't have the time to study this strange star. Instead, he moved in front of a stone platform on the star. The stone platform was covered in dust, and many parts of it had fallen off. However, there were 3 black iron boxes on the stone platform, shining with a black light. Every mouthful was brand new, without a speck of dust, unaffected by the dust at all. Upon closer inspection, one could see that the black iron boxes were emitting a layer of black light that kept the dust away. Su Yu wasn't unfamiliar with these black boxes. There was a black iron box at the bottom of the lava pool where the crafting legacy was located. Su Yu had obtained a mysterious heavenly crafting technique from it, as well as a fairy-level cultivation technique, the Great Sun Punishment Fairy Picture. Moreover, the black iron box itself was an extremely rare treasure, and the items stored within it were even more precious. The one in the middle contains the thunder attribute, so it belongs to me. You can choose one of the remaining 2, and we'll split the last one equally. Su Yu's eyes were filled with excitement. His soul eyes couldn't see through the black box, but the prototype fairy artifact, the 5-elemental strong thunder seal, could sense it. The 5-elemental strong thunder seal could only sense one thing, and that was disastrous thunder. The 5-elemental strong thunder seal would become more powerful after absorbing disastrous thunder. Shockingly, this black box contained tribulation lightning. Moreover, since it was left behind by Tianjizi and placed on the last star, it must be an extraordinary item. I'll listen to Brother Yu. Xia Jingyu's beautiful eyes were filled with splendor. She had only managed to reach this place because of Su Yu, so she was only grateful that she could split it equally. Su Yu wanted to suck the black box away, so that he could open it when he had the time. However, he found that the black box was extremely heavy, much heavier than the black box at the bottom of the lava pool. He couldn't store it in his ring. As such, he could only open it on the spot. They were not far from the shore, so if they looked carefully, they could still see what was inside the box. This was something that Su Yu didn't want to see. With a thought, Su Yu carefully used his spirit energy to strike the black iron box's buckle. Crack! With a crisp sound, the black iron box opened. The moment it opened, a black bolt of lightning suddenly shot out, heading straight for Su Yu. It was actually black lightning, which was rare. The black lightning was different from normal lightning. After it appeared, it was silent, and there was no sound of thunder. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that it was normal light, as it didn't look like lightning at all. However, Su Yu felt a chill run down his spine, and his heart was beating wildly. At that moment, Su Yu felt like he was a candle flickering in the wind, about to be extinguished at the next moment. Sensing that Su Yu and the other two were trying to obtain the legacy of this place, Bai Yijian and Shangguan Qing'er's gazes turned serious, filled with anticipation. After the black lightning appeared, the two of them looked as if they had seen a terrifying demon. Their expressions changed drastically, and without thinking, they retreated frantically. Shangguan Qing'er exclaimed in shock, "The black heavenly thunder that only appears when an all-creation old monster passes the ordeal." There was surprise in her tone, but there was also an indescribable fear and dread. "It's actually this kind of lightning?" Su Yu was also shocked. The origin of the black lightning was frighteningly powerful. Without thinking, Su Yu tilted his shoulder and dodged to the side as he was prepared. The lightning passed by 30 feet away, brushing past him. Then, a scene that made everyone's scalps go numb appeared. The black lightning shot into the distance, and along the way, all the lightning that came into contact with it turned into black dust and drifted away. How hard were the stars in this place? Even the Guardian clan had not been able to destroy a single one of them after hundreds of years. However, this wisp of black lightning easily turned it into dust. Seeing this scene, everyone gasped in shock. This black heavenly thunder had been released unconsciously. If it had been used to attack people, who would not have been turned into dust? Everyone was shocked, and they quickly looked towards the black iron box. All they saw was a circle of black silk threads, as thin as silk coiled into a ball. The black disastrous thunder had come from these black silk threads. This is the beast tendon of an all-creation demonic beast that has passed the ordeal. Shangguan Qing'er cried out. Bai Yijian was ecstatic. It's the dragon tendon. It's the dragon tendon of a real spirit dragon. A real spirit dragon? Su Yu was secretly shocked. This All-Creations senior once traveled with another All-Creations friend, and they found a real spirit dragon's corpse in an ancient ruin. This dragon tendon was obtained from the real spirit dragon's corpse. Bai Yijian was ecstatic. If he had not been concerned about his status, he might have even laughed out loud.